Let's twist and lay around. There is nothing I can do. This wild doesn't spread. It just turns itself on. The night chose tide in the screen.
All right, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another episodic discussion podcast with the Infinite Ammo Syndicate. I am your host, Renegade Operative, and today we are here to talk about Evil Within 1 and 2. We are revisiting this series once again. I know we talked about it on the channel like eons ago with old panelists, but we have a lot of fresh faces here who never really got a chance to talk about the game on air, so I'm giving that liberty and opportunity. I want to introduce my first guest, and that is Ren Ben.
Hey everybody, I'm Run Ben. I'm a variety streamer on Twitch and super happy to be here.
Next up, we have Tolkien.
I just go by Lady Tolkien, co-owner of these wonderful servers along with Ren. I'm super excited to be back on a podcast. I think it's been God knows how long since I've been on one. Might even have been back in Resident Evil 4 Remake when that came out. Might have been the last, but Evil Within's been one of my favorites since 10 years ago when it came out, and I'm super excited to get the chance to be on it now that we're talking about it again.
You're tardy. You better be on for RE9.
Duh, I am gonna be here for RE9. I missed RE8 by like a week by the time I got invited into the server.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm gonna try to definitely do more of these second chances so people can have the ability to get on for sure. But next we have Nino.
Hello, I'm Nino, also known as Nino Kunri. I am a variety streamer on Twitch, doing mainly horror games and every now and then some cozy games.
Next up is Enderlucian.
I'm Enderlucian. We're gonna be talking about Evil Within 1 and 2. Hoping for the re at some point. I don't know. We'll see.
And last but not least, we have Darkslayer. Introduce yourself, good sir.
How's it going, everybody? My name's Darkslayer. I also stream horror games and a variety of games on Twitch and YouTube. It goes by Scenario Beat. I'm happy to be here with also fellow horror connoisseurs. Looking to have a great time tonight.
And we're gonna get into it with the first question. So, what was your first introduction into Evil Within, and how did you discover it for the first time in history? I will go with Tolkien first.
All right. Well, as many people know, I did not grow up with video games in my family. It was like one of those things. My parents were the, oh, video games aren't good for you kind of types. So I did not start playing video games until pretty much way later on in grade school, and it was all only Nintendo. Did not touch Resident Evil until high school, Resident Evil 4 on the Wii was the very first horror game I ever played, and Evil Within 1 was my second horror game that I got to play. Had a friend introduce me to it. I fell immediately in love with this game, became so obsessed with this game. I can't even tell you how many times I've played through this game. Just loved everything about it. DLCs. Played the second one, and I've just been a huge fan. It will always be one of probably my top favorite horror games of all.
Nino, it is your turn. How did you get introduced into Evil Within in the first time in history?
Gosh, well, I've been a lifelong gamer. I can't even remember. I think like the first games I ever played were back when I was maybe 5 or 6 with my cousins. My earliest memories are like playing Contra 3, Alien Wars, and Castlevania, and other things like that. And got introduced to Resident Evil early in life with, I think, the first game that came out in the early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, somewhere in there. And followed anything Shinji did after that. And then when I heard he was making a different game outside of the Resident Evil series, I just immediately was like instant pre-order, had to get it, didn't even know what it was about yet. So I was just like ready for anything new that he was going to do, because his mind is, I don't understand how his mind works, but it's always something interesting. So I was on board from day one.
I'm gonna go next. My story is very similar. I've been playing a lot of horror games for like the longest time now. A lot of just other games as well. Been gaming since Mortal Kombat on the Genesis, and I believe my first RE was RE2 all the way back in the past. So Shinji Mikami just working on things and doing things was very interesting, and I always follow his work. And then I remember he left Capcom when the whole thing with Clover Studio kind of went belly up, and he was just frustrated. And I remember he went to Platinum Games for a little bit, made Vanquish, and then carried over into Tango Gameworks. And I was very compelled that he was going back to horror, because there was that time where he was like off the grid from it, and as soon as they said, oh, he's going back to a new horror game, that snapped me in instantly, and I was like, I'm hooked, I'm buying this day one. And I saw the concept art when they had this dark and gloomy like cloud and everything, and it looked all gothic and dark as fuck, and I really appreciated it. And then that project turned into the Evil Within, and I was just like, you know, I'm gonna pick this up. I played it day one. I remember just really enjoying it quite a bit. As for the sequel, I believe I caught that when that was the conference that was done for Bethesda, when they stealth dropped it and said it's coming out in October. So as soon as they did that, the game looked bigger, badder, and scarier, and that's how I got sort of enticed into that game. I was like, I like the first one, I'm gonna get the second one, and that's the first thing that I said when I picked it up, and I was like, this is also pretty good, maybe a little bit even better. That's how I got into the entire series. It was pretty straightforward, but I figured I might as well tell my story there. Next up is Interlution. How did you get into Evil Within for the first time?
So, back when it came out on the PS3, I think it was my dad. He purchased it, and I was so much younger at that point in time. I think that was around like 2014, maybe 2015, maybe 2013. I have no idea, but I picked it up, and I remember just playing a small bit of it. Chapter 3 was just so memorable because there's just a lot to do in that chapter, and there was not much remembered past that. But then I picked the game back up like maybe 7 years ago. I can't remember. I'll have to check my trophies or something. And I basically just grinded it to the point where I played Akumu, and then I beat Akumu, and I got the platinum. So that was really painful, but now I'm here. When it came to the second one, I picked that up actually before I got back into the first one, and that's when I finally decided to get back into the first one, because I love the second one, but I just love both of them.
Ren Ben, it is your turn. How did you get on board with the Evil Within series?
So this ended up being what was my it ended sorry, let me start over. This ended up being the second horror game that I ever streamed on my channel. So I've mentioned it before in podcasts, but I did not come into horror as a genre and really enjoying horror games until about 4 years ago. And it was Halloween, and I wanted something that was scary to play, and so I let everybody vote on it. And I had some people tell me that The Evil Within, oh, it's really scary. It's by the same person that made the Resident Evil games. I'm like, okay, this sounds awesome. So I put it on there, and I had a heart rate monitor and everything, and it ended up winning the poll, and that was when I played it, and it ended up making such a big impact on me. I didn't expect that. It scared the crap out of me. And I ended up like immediately starting to replay it right after because I was like, this is so cool. There's so many cool things in this. I need to play it again. I have no idea what's going on still, even though I beat the game. So I need to play it again and figure out more. And that was my introduction to The Evil Within.
And Dark Slayer, it is your turn. How did you discover Evil Within for the first time?
Well, my story is pretty much similar to, uh, I also played horror games from a really early age. Resident Evil 1 being very much horror game. I still remember it to this day. It was on PlayStation. And it took me forever to beat it. So it absolutely scared the mess out of me because that was a whole 6-year-old playing this M-rated game. Um, but I was very much a big follower of Shinji Mikami. And like, just to piggyback for where he was saying that I also found out that he was working on a new horror game. And I was extremely ecstatic. And the first trailer I ever saw was, I don't know if y'all remember the live action one that they showed. It was like when E3 was still a thing. That one just had me completely captivated out. I think I just refrained from watching any and all gameplay from him until the came out, just so I could be like really fresh on it. And it really struck I don't know, it just really itched a spot in my brain that I really loved. I just loved how it played, the atmosphere, how they went about it with the story. Um, and the second game was completely random for me. I just so happened upon it while I was looking at the other like horror games that were coming out, and just randomly happened upon it. So that was an instant sold for me. That was an instant sell for me. And after playing it, I very much enjoyed both the games. I found myself enjoying the second, but that's just like a personal thing I'll get into later. But yeah, that's pretty much how I came into it.
All right, we're gonna move on to question number 2, and that is, how do you feel about the general story and thoughts on the other characters or villains for both Evil Within games? Before I call on the next person, I'm just gonna say I think Dark Slayer, you need to see and check your mic settings because you're cutting out slightly. But we're going to have Ren Ben go first on this one.
Okay. So my general thoughts on the games, it is still, despite all the other horror games that I've played since playing this the first time, these two games still remain two of my favorites. And I didn't know until after the fact, but I actually prefer the first one a little bit more, and I think it's just because of the impression that first game made on me. Um but in terms of the general story, it is I remember my first impression after going through the first one in particular. Um it felt a little convoluted, but not I don't I don't know how to describe it. Like I was confused, but I needed to know more. It was the first time that I felt so compelled to like, okay, I have to go through this game. I have to find out all the finer details. I still don't know what's going on, but I need to know more. I like the character. Sebastian is still one of my favorite protagonists. I absolutely adore him. People give me crap about it because I also think he's very handsome, but I thought he was really interesting. You wouldn't it was a different take on the cop as a protagonist in a horror game because he's not just a cop, he's a detective. There's more, he comes from a different background. I like the villains, I think a little bit more in 2 to 1 compared to 1. And I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the guy who had the cameras, like that, I remember that boss fight still sticks out to me because thank you, Stefano. Because he creeped me out, but it was also like it was so unique. Like it felt a lot of the bosses felt very unique to me in the second game in particular. But yeah, so that's like my general thoughts. I do remember thinking, wow, there's just eyes everywhere. That, it's, again, the first game in particular was so early on in my horror game career, I guess you could say, that I was like, wow, they really do just use eyes as motifs in all the horror games. Okay, all right, I got to get used to this. But I mean, my general thoughts in terms of the story just overall is it's confusing. I still think I don't quite understand everything, but I've never felt as though the game made me feel dumber for not understanding everything. Like it felt like a story that it was okay if you didn't understand everything. It was just a really cool experience. Also, I particularly enjoyed the cat that they used, and I loved the idea of how the cat was part of the save feature in the second game. Like I saw the black cat with the red ribbon. I was like, oh my God, there's a cat in this game. So, but yes. So that's kind of a little bit of a hodgepodge my take on the general story and the characters.
All right, I'm gonna go next. The first one is definitely very confusing. I feel like in order to get all of the leeway that you can muster in this game, because it's not like something equivalent to Resident Evil where the story is pretty straightforward. This is Shinji Mikami doing something weird and doing all the stuff with the mind and the psychology and trying to go a lot more psychological horror with this. And it just felt like, I wouldn't say it's all over the place, but it felt like you needed to do a lot of groundwork to connect the tissue of the game. And I eventually discovered it through notes. You see what happened with Ruvik and his sister, and then him going on that sort of feud between him and the other guy. I forget his name, Jimenez. Yeah, it's really intricate. And I did like it over time when I started to get into all of the plot, the details, the story, and the characters. It's also tragic as well because then you see Mr. Ruvik over there. He not only lost his sister, but he got his skin all burnt up and everything, and he turned into this weird looking corpse figure. It's kind of crazy the way they do it. And then you just see him tearing through people in STEM as you go on this investigation, and you don't know what's going on. He's appearing out of nowhere, stuff is appearing out of everywhere, and then you get to the end of the game. There's a bit more context with the fact that they're all hooked up in systems, and you find out that this is kind of a digital imprint, and you relive the nightmare all over again with a different imprint in Evil Within 2. I felt like 2 is a lot more focused and straightforward because they got the concept down in that game. Overall, though, you come in with characters that are memorable, everyone's gonna know who Sebastian is, obviously, and not only that, but Kidman is someone I liked really, really well. And Oda, and just everyone in the cast just stands out in their own unique way, and that's sort of how Mikami really does things. It's like he creates characters that, on a visual level, is just kind of cool and awesome. And then the second one, yeah, the bosses, the enemies, just Stefano is like really great. He's a great opening boss for how they handle him. Just all around, I really enjoyed all the threads so far, and they decided to make Sebastian a lot more humane in the second game because of the fact that you're going in there because of his daughter this time around, whereas it felt like his characterization in the first one was a lot more vague and unknown, and you had to uncover, it's a lot of stuff going on with him and his wife. Where is that going to lead to? And it culminates really well in the second game. So I would say when you understand it, when you get it, when they tie it all together, it's worthwhile as an experience. Next is Nino. How do you think about this story, and do you think they handle it well, and the characters and everything?
Oh my gosh, like I've been recently thinking about the game since I knew the podcast was coming up, and like revisiting it and trying to refresh my memory on all the things that happened. And like it's honestly one of my favorite horror game series, franchises, whatever you want to call it, ever. So just because of the story from 1 to 2 that it tells. And I personally, I mean, not all horror has to tell a story, but I love when it does. And I feel like the first one maybe has a slight edge over the second one for me, just because I like when you just kind of get thrown into the mix of things. I feel like opposite of what everybody else was saying, when they're like, they were confused by it or kept guessing, or they didn't know what was happening. That just kind of thrilled me. It kept me guessing. It like amped up the tension for me. It made me more anxious because I didn't know what was going on. And I love the enemies. I'm trying to think. Like I feel like my brain is going all over the place trying to think of everything at once. But like I guess I really liked the Keeper the first time you encounter it, especially the first time it's mask, helmet, whatever. I don't even know what. I guess the cage face the first time it opens, and just I remember screaming on my couch while I was playing and when that happened. I'm trying to think of what else. Stefano, like everybody else mentioned, I definitely agree with Ren Ben on that. Like it was just character design, the way he comes in, the way you don't know what's happening into, how everything just like they do that stop motion thing, and just the artwork of it. It just was a lot of feelings. It was overwhelming, but in a good way. I'm trying to think of what else. That might be it for now. I think that's it. I'm rambling. Next person. But yeah, anyway, overall, I loved it.
Overall, we have next the fake gamer, that is Tolkien. So go ahead on this crest.
Boy, no, you cannot take my insult and turn it back on me. Don't dare start with me.
I just did.
No.
All right, it's your turn.
Anyway, so how I feel about the general story. Okay, I love both games. I really do. But naturally, how I feel that happens with a lot of people with games and movies, I think the first one is just better. To me, if I had to put it on a pedestal, I easily pick first over second. I think villains are good in both, but for me, Ruvik himself is just by far one of the best villains in a horror game. Even today, I think he still holds up, and the game's 10 years old. I mean, he's so, like, recognizable. Everybody knows who he is. Like, everybody's played this game. Like, I remember feeling for him, sympathizing for him, and even siding with a lot of what he did, even though, yes, he's a psycho. You just can't help it. It's like everything that was just done to him in his whole life. Like, just picked on, lost his sister, became disfigured, abused and used for his intelligence for STEM, and with Jimenez, like, you just feel for the guy, and like the destruction that he left in his wake and killing Jimenez and other people. I mean, you can't help but feel they deserved it. Like, I mean, look what they did. They ruined his life. And sure, like the villains in the second one are good. I think the photographer is interesting, the priest is interesting, but for me, they just don't come even close to what Ruvik was. Like, not even close. Good, but not like him. Like, he's just, I don't know. I don't know how better to describe it. He's just so unique and interesting, and I just did not think they could capture the photographer and the priest like they did for him. Other than the evil characters, I like obviously the good characters. Both sides are good. Kidman's good. Joseph was good. Like, of course, not to the level as Sebastian, of course, but that's a question for later. But I remember growing up, you know, everybody looks at Joseph, and for those that know, obviously it's Yuri, voices the English voice acting for him in the game. But me growing up, and I was not like a huge Spider-Man fan or anything, and I didn't know that, I always looked at it, and when I played the game, I see Joseph and he's talking, and I go, oh my god, that's the English VA for Sasuke in Naruto. I'm like, and that's all I ever thought about, was that it's fucking Sasuke Uchiha from Naruto and never Yuri. But yeah, I love both games. I just prefer one over two.
Next up is Enderlucian. Well, how do you feel about the fact that obviously the general story is here, the characters, the concepts, the villains? What do you feel about that in the Evil Within games?
So my thoughts on the story, I didn't like the whole STEM system where you're basically put in a digital world dealing with all these nightmare things. Ruvik, I mean, he is actually like a really good boss character just in general. It's been a while, but Tolkien did kind of give me a reminder on that, like, of the story with him. I did like the other characters like Joseph, Sebastian himself. Laura was really good. I love the story between Laura and Ruvik. It's honestly pretty heartbreaking there. Stefano in the second one. I don't know if y'all remember. There was Obscura. It was the camera one with the legs. That was a pretty unique one. And the keeper as well. I personally think the keeper should be like be put in like Dead by Daylight. That's what I personally think. But I think that's all I got for right now, because yeah, that's all I got for right now.
All right, that's all good. We're gonna move on to the next person. Darkslayer, how do you feel about the general story, thoughts on the characters and the villains of Evil Within between 1 and 2?
Where should I start? Definitely with the story between 1 and 2. One was pretty interesting to say the least. Just on the fact that it's like it's hard-boiled detective man, and all of a sudden everything just turns into this like waking hellmare. So it was really interesting. Like I said before, I love the atmosphere and what Shinji did with all the caricatures of the enemies and the bosses. Ruvik definitely goat of a boss, honestly, of a villain. I did like Stefano a lot as well. Actually, he kind of reminds me of it was I think it was the main antagonist of it was one movie which I'm sure they probably drew inspiration from. I forget what it's called. I think it's when they all get hooked up into a machine and go into a mind of a serial killer. It pretty much reminded me of that, and I really enjoyed it for what it was. The story definitely unfolding more in the second game. What really did it for me? What kind of puts it ahead of the first game for me? And definitely my favorite, and one of my favorite bosses to fight is it wasn't obscure. It was the other one. God, the many face one. I can't remember her name, but like I think it was the Guardian. I think
Yeah, it's
it
the
was like an
Guardian.
amalgamation. Yeah, 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 yeah. The Guardian was a great one for me just because she was like an amalgamation of like like Sadako and everything like that. And she just like body parts and it, it was just really enjoyable to like run away from her and fight against her. Um, I do really like this. I think one of my favorite plot lines in the game is Kidman's. I really want to know more about her whole thing with the organization that they work for and whatnot. Just to see if they go deeper into that or how that works out. But yeah, that's pretty much my feelings on both those games when it comes to story and enemies.
Alrighty, we're moving to question number 3. What are your thoughts on the main protagonist, Sebastian Castellanos? And we will go with Rim Ben first.
Okay. So, as I mentioned before, he's one of my favorite protagonists. I really liked him. In the first game, kind of like everybody was saying, or like somebody had mentioned earlier, he is a little bit more of an enigma in the first game. You don't know as much about him. You know that he's a detective and he went to investigate a case, and by the end that you know that there was something going on, in his home life, but you didn't get to know him, it felt like, as much as a character. But then in the second game, you got to know him a lot more. You found out his daughter, we were going after his daughter in the game to save his daughter, and it did humanize him quite a bit more, and it made me really like him. Although it did throw me off that, if I remember correctly, they switched, I think his voice actor switched between the two games, and it threw me off at first. But, and also, or maybe I could be wrong, don't correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Also, his model changed a little bit too. Okay, they did. Okay. But overall, I really like him. I feel like he is he's very interesting. It's probably the best way I can think of to describe it. He has a lot more depth than you would think at first glance, and I really like how they built his character throughout the two games, particularly in the second.
All right, I will go next. As a protagonist, avatar character, I liked him. They put a lot of foreshadowing into his character in the first one with the whole family man stuff, the incidents with his wife and how she got shot and how they were both like partners in crime, detectives, and then she went missing and everyone started disappearing, and you get in the notes the lead up to 2 where Sebastian was going through a lot of loneliness, and that's something that's really good in the first game and the second game. As you try to see what's going on, you're also having that audience surrogate moment, like you're seeing giant monsters come out of the ground and you're wondering what the hell's going on. And I like my favorite was the scene in the elevator where he just throws away the cigarettes because it's like pointless at that rate, which adds to his character of being like stern, but also knowing when certain situations are kind of helpless and trying to just stand tall and persevere is one thing I really liked about the character. And 2, I think it also, them symbolizing everything that was in the notes came out into fruition. So I'm glad they gave him more of that personality outwardly to be like, I'm going to go save my daughter. I might have to go into a place I don't want to go into, which is STEM again. And he was just cursing everything, Mobius and whatnot, but that just was going to show the lengths of how he was going to try to save his family. And I think as a relatable character, character, that makes sense. People make fun of it. They make the memes of, oh, you have Sebastian, you have Alan Wake, you have Ethan Winters, and they are all sort of the fatherly archetype. But that works in the horror game because, again, you are trying to face the worst fears and go in there alone and find the person that you care about the most, and hopefully they come out from the other side safe and unharmed. So I think that works well for storytelling, and you just get it. Human relatability is the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to Sebastian, in my personal opinion. Next up is Nino. What do you think of Sebastian as a character?
Oh, I absolutely love Sebastian. He's probably one of my favorite horror protagonists out there, like survival horror. Um, I think when I was thinking about this question, I was like, flawed hero came to mind. I mean, you can tell, like, coming in, you don't really know him. He just seems like very over it, very burnt out, very grizzled. And, you know, like every other time I'm playing survival horror, the person's like always in a panic, like wondering, what is this? How do I get out of this? Oh no. And then he gets chased down that hallway, gets in the elevator, slams this crushed cigarette pack, and then he's just even over everything that's happening to him in that moment. His responses to everything are so matter of fact, so sarcastic, so crass. It was just really amusing to me. And then you get to know him more in the second one, and you find out his backstory, and you kind of, at least for me, my heart just kind of broke for him. He just had gone through so much, and like this glimmer of hope that he could get his daughter back, maybe get his whole family back, and like, I don't know, it's one of the few games that actually made me emotional at the end, even thinking about it. And I will say, when they showed him at the beginning of 2 and they did that flashback of him and the whole family, I was not expecting a clean shaven version of him, and it kind of jump scared me a little bit. But like didn't look like him. But it even made kind of just like drove the point home more that he had been through a lot from before you even knew who he was and you were thrown in with him at the asylum to the end of his story, ... maybe, hopefully we get more, by the end of 2.
Next up is Tolkien. What do you think of Sebastian as a character?
Well, like pretty much everybody else has already said, I loved Sebastian. I mean, it just goes to show, like in a lot of games, it seems like you don't need this. Well, Ren will say differently. You don't need this drop dead gorgeous hunk of a man to be a good protagonist. You can have this older, wiser, just fucked over character, and you still feel for him, you still recognize him. I think he's just, I don't know, he's so good. Just like I did for Ruvik, I felt for Sebastian the whole game. Like, working the force, being a detective, it's the amount of work you have to do, being underappreciated by society, your boss, your coworkers. Finally met and married the love of his life that he met at work, and then having a daughter, and you just read all of his notes as you're playing through, and you feel so happy for him, and oh man, somehow this all got fucked up. And you read that, daughter dies in the fire, and then wife goes missing, and, you feel so bad for him. And you can tell the man just fell so low into depression and drinking and smoking, and already feels so bad. But then, he hears other people are saying, oh, it's his fault that his wife just left. His fault for this and that, and got to make him feel even worse. And you just feel so bad for him, and you sympathize so much, and you just root for him and for good things to happen throughout the whole game. And I just think whoever voiced him is just so good. And some of the voice lines are just not even meant to be funny, but to me ended up being funny because the way he voices things, certain parts of the game where just randomly he goes, what the fuck? And it's just the way he says it is just so hysterical to me. I think he's such a good character.
Lucian, it is your turn. What is your take on Sebastian as a complete character?
So I love Sebastian as a character. I mean, he has in the second game, Well, let's start from the first game. Yeah, he's a detective. You do, as mentioned before, you do learn a lot about him and like what's going on the sidelines, in the notes and everything, and just overall, there's not much from the first game, but once you do go on the second game, you do learn about his daughter and then everything that has happened. I mean, it's basically the same thing, like Ethan Winters and all that, all the dads and everything, but the story does take a toll, does get quite emotional at the end there, but um, yeah, I do love his character. I do need to revisit the games, but that's all I got.
Dark Slayer, it is your turn. What do you think of Sebastian as a character?
Definitely as a character, I really loved how he developed from the first game. Just going through and finding out exactly, how what mind was going through, especially with the whole and the STEM system. Just going through all this bullshit just from a normal day. Well, it was supposed to be a normal investigation, and then, like you said, someone mentioned earlier with the notes and going through them and reading what actually happened to him leading up to that point and what got him to that case. And it's really depressing. And then I love in the first game that it kind of like there are certain sections where it shows what he was actually going through during the time after the hospital from the first game. And I really love how he developed in the second game. Like I said, that and just the how the other characters develop around him as well, but mostly Sebastian. Uh, yeah, he's probably like one of the best horror game antagonists, protagonists that I've seen in a while with such great storytelling.
For the next question, we're going to cycle back to the first one with gameplay content. There was a bunch of DLCs. There was a whole ass season pass in the first Evil Within. Did you play any of the DLC, like the Executioner, the Assignment, and the Consequence? And I will go with Ren Ben first.
I keep going first. Um, I did play the DLC. Admittedly, it has been a hot minute since I've played the DLC, but I did play them. And I remember with the Executioner in particular, I really enjoyed that one because it gave you a different take on the Keeper. I think if I'm remembering them correctly. And I really did enjoy them. But I think I'm going to refrain on talking about some of the other ones because I don't remember them quite as well. But I did enjoy the DLC because I do remember you got some really good expansion on some of the stories. And I'm always down for giving more expansion on the stories.
Okay, I'm gonna go next. I played really one of them before today, and that was the Assignments. That was the first one that I played. I have not played the Consequence, and I've played the Executioner today. I'm gonna start with that one first. That DLC, for all intents and purposes, is, for lack of better words, so fucking stupid. Like, it's stupid in a good way because you're playing as the Keeper in first person and you're going around, you're smashing things with a hammer, you're doing execution style stomps. It's actually pretty funny, just to go around as the big monster and kill everything that moves, every haunted in there, everything. I thought the boss fights were also like a little bit challenging. You kind of gotta, stick and move. You can't just stay in the same spot, otherwise you're gonna get clobbered. So there's a bit of strategy to it, as well as upgrading weapons, equipment. You can get a chainsaw and cut things in half. It's very fun in terms of what they do. It can get a bit repetitive, I say, because once you got every weapon and everything and you're all the way upgraded and you smash things with one hit, it can get a little bit like monotonous. You're running the gauntlet mostly, but I believe that's mostly what the mode is, and they try to keep it fresh with fighting the bosses in a new way, in first person, getting around with the hammer and using differing traits. So it does open up a new avenue for how that game plays in terms of being a creature, which is kind of cool. You can even use the keeper's head to teleport into new areas, and just it's kind of awesome how he still does the animation of ripping his head off, and the save goes on the ground and then you teleport somewhere. I thought that was cool. For the assignments, it's basically a giant stealth mission. You don't have a gun. You're playing as Kitman and you have to sneak around everything. Otherwise, if you get seen by the big enemy that's there, you will die. I forgot what it was. I think it was a big lady in like a raincoat, and she had these red heels, and it's a really weird fucking creature. It has like a little what do you call those little lamps on their head, like a lighthouse? It looks like that. And if it sees you, it turns red and it starts running towards you, and if it grabs you, you're pretty much gonna get eaten under the shawl. You're dead. I liked it for what it was, but I wish I played the other one. Yeah, the Spotlight. I wish I played the other one where Kidman does have a weapon and she can actually shoot stuff in there. I know that's what they added to that DLC. That's more of the action side where you can play with Kidman and like pop a cap in someone's ass. As for the rest, I thought they were good for what they are. I played the assignment also on Kuriyami mode where they dim the lights. I thought it was really stupid when they did it, but it's sort of, they dim the lights everywhere on the hardest mode and you can't see a thing. It's like good luck. It's basically a stealth mission, but everything's like all dark. So that's their version of Akumu mode, which I thought was very interesting. Overall, I wish, it's just part of me that wishes that 2 kind of got the same package of like an extended DLC, because that season pass really has a lot of cool content in there. So if you're looking to play Evil Within with a lot of goodies, I would recommend picking that pass up 100%. Next up is Nino. How do you feel about the DLC if you played it for the first one?
I have not played the DLC, so I'll admit that I did watch playthroughs of them just so I can get the context of them before I played the second one. And I did actually, I enjoyed the DLC more than I thought. Now, at least watching the content, I like that you got the backstory on what Kidman was going through on her end, and the whole concept of, what was it called, like the administration? Is that what it was? They were intense, like that whole giant, like that whole, all of like her boss things, especially, it kind of made me think back to games like Haunting Ground, where you were just wandering around and you couldn't really fight anything. And there's a different level of tension with that, so I enjoy that concept. And I also with oh gosh, now I'm forgetting names again. The one with the keeper, Executioner, is that what it's called? I think again.
Yes.
That one, I like that you got to see it from that perspective. Up until that point, you were just terrified of the guy, and then you see that point of view, and you're like, okay, well, now I kind of feel bad, still terrified, but now I feel for him and everything he had to go through. It's in basically a situation that was impossible from the start, it seemed. But yeah, I definitely do plan to revisit them. I'm gonna do a play of the games again soon, and this time with the DLC, so that way I can just get the full experience this time through. Especially since I made the mistake of looking at a current sale that is going on, and they're all very cheap right now. So that was my mistake. So it'll probably happen.
I also want to add like one small thing with the Keeper DLC. I do like these little story segments where it seems that the creature itself, before the guy got into STEM and turned into what he is, he did have a daughter, and you kind of see her sort of trail along and follow along and open doors, but she is integral in his sections of the game, and I am curious as to where that's going to lead. I assume that she's dead along with him at this rate, considering, well, it was the stuff that happened in the main game, and you kind of kill the keepers. But I still think that it's a very interesting tidbit that they managed to squeeze in story with like enemy gauntlets. That was pretty cool. Next up is Tolkien. Did you play any of this DLC for the first Evil Within?
I did indeed play all three at least once. And I appreciated them a lot. It answers a lot of questions. I know loads of people, me included. You know, you finish the first game and you're like, okay, wait, I have questions that aren't answered. I'm so confused. And so I like how they designed it that way to play the DLC, to get more backstory, to understand Kidman, and all these other things that are just going on in the background as you're playing Sebastian that are finally getting answered. And I really liked the juxtaposition of how they changed the DLCs to be so different, playing Kidman versus Sebastian, whereas Sebastian, you know, you're loaded with all these weapons and this gear, and you don't necessarily have to play stealthy if you don't want to. If you want to go in swinging and shooting everything up and blowing things to pieces, you can. Whereas Kidman, you pretty much have no choice. You have to stealth, be smart, be cunning, because you don't have a gun except for very tiny, small parts. You have to, you know, call out to enemies and trick them to come around corners and hide in areas and use flashlight to open up new pathways or secrets. And it's just so different. It's actually terrifying playing as her, and then having the mode where you can play without the lights on completely, and the only thing you have is a flashlight. It's like, bruh, you made it even worse. And then you have the fucking spotlight chasing after you all the time, and it's like, it's a creepy ass villain. Like, it's a freaking one shot. You get found by that thing and you're just getting chomped. You gone. And like Ren said, you have the cat as the saving point. Bruh, as a cat lover, oh, I love it. I wish more games would have cats as save points. Like, really, come on. Sit there, just have that cat on my lap and just not play the game. I'll just sit there. I'll be happy. And playing the Executioner was fun as well. It's just, again, you don't expect a DLC like that. You go from playing Evil Within, and then to the other two DLC, which are super serious, and then you get into the Executioner, and you're like, what the fuck? You're playing as the Keeper, and you're just beating the living shit out of mobs and bosses that you've met already that probably beat the living shit out of you playing as Sebastian, and now you get to do the opposite. And it's just so crazy. The weapons you get, the other things you can put down, like bombs and traps, and it's just so silly. But it's so great that they worked him into the story there for his daughter. Last I read, it takes place after the Evil Within base game, and it's just more knowledge, more lore to get you back into STEM, and it's just all interesting. I think they're very well done, very good. I can't wait to go back.
Next up is Enderlucian. Did you play the DLC for Evil Within 1?
Yeah, so I did I think play all the DLCs. It's been a while. It's definitely a revisit for me. I wish I did remember more of it. I do remember the Executioner one. I mean, it was a bit fun. We did get a more in-depth story on the Executioner. Kind of forgot the details, unfortunately. But for me, the DLCs were quite enjoyable, especially playing as Kidman as well. It was more content, so I did love that.
Next up is Darkslayer. Did you play the DLC for the very first game? And if so, what do you think about it?
I would actually like to start. I played through all of them, and the one I remember at least was Executioner. But I'll just start with that one. The funniest part about that is the very first time I played through that, I could not have been more confused at what I was looking at when I booted it up, because I was expecting like a like just like an expansion of the story of what's going on. I was like, oh, maybe it's a different story content and whatnot. And my first couple of goes at it, I was so confused. I thought my game like glitched. I'm like, what is this? This is just a first person like monster beater. I was like, what the like? And then I started getting more depth into the story of the keeper and why he is the way he is, and I was connected to Ruvik and whatnot. Uh, with the assignment and I forget what the second one's called. Uh, the consequences, something like that. Either way, both the ones with Kidman were very enjoyable. It was definitely like a step in a different direction from playing as Sebastian when he's just running and gutting through the entirety of the world of STEM, to where it's like now you actually have to like someone mentioned earlier, be smart about it and kind of use strategy so you can get around these enemies, and especially the one big baddie that one shots you if her spotlight hits you. Um, like I said, I did like the story going on and telling more about Kidman's past and how Mobius ended up finding her and recruiting her and all that, kind of just making her into this blank slate of an agent just to get in cahoots with Sebastian and the other guy. I forget his name, but yeah, for what it was, I very much enjoyed it. Just for its pure story content, if not just have a new big baddie to be afraid of when I played through the first game. But yeah, I enjoyed it very much so.
All right, we're moving to the next question here. Your favorite weapons to use within the entirety of Evil Within. It could be weapons from the first one, the second one. It don't matter which one was your favorite, and we will go with Tolkien first.
Oh boy. All right. So I pretty much like them all, of course. Whether a horror game has weapons or doesn't have weapons, different strokes for different folks, as I like to say. But for me personally, I loved the Agony crossbow. It was just, it's not like it was super different, but having a crossbow and you could have 7 different kinds of ammo that do so many different things in the game, to me is just really cool. You have your freeze, your poison, explosive, the harpoons, flash ones, shock, fire. Like, it's just so many different ones and so many different situations to use, and good against so many of the mobs and the bosses, and easy to craft. But granted, like, it's so funny watching gameplay of people playing this game that are so afraid of untrapping the traps and getting the pieces to make the bolts. Like, you could make so many bolts in your game, but so many people are afraid of the traps blowing up and killing them that you're missing out on so much ammo. And oh my gosh, it's such a good weapon. And of course, like, who doesn't like using a magnum or a revolver over a basic ass pistol? Like, it's just so satisfying shooting those weapons. I don't know. I just think there was a weapon pretty much for everybody. You have a sniper, a shotgun, the revolver, you find the Agony crossbow, and then, of course, once you beat the game, you get a rocket launcher, a machine gun. It's just so many to pick from. I think there's something for everybody. And even with consecutive playthroughs, you have more to pick from and choose if you are going to go for that really scary plat.
All right, it is my turn. There's a small selection of weapons. All of them have like varying abilities. I'm gonna try to keep it simple and do my favorites. I'm just gonna say for the record, just getting the brass knuckles, because I remember at one point I had them in the first one, and it's so funny. You could just run up on someone and you could punch their goddamn head off, and it's the best thing to do in the game on New Game Plus. They are hilarious. I think if you hit someone with them and you have them on, it's an automatic decapitation from what I remember personally. If I'm wrong, correct me, but I believe that's what happens when you punch someone, and it's kind of funny. So if you want to go Doom guy and literally smash someone's head in, you can do that in the game. For another weapon that I like, I'm just gonna go old fashioned and say the Magnum is pretty great. It does what it needs. It's definitely high power, less ammo. That's how the Magnums tend to work with Shinji Mikami, but I don't care because it's really goddamn good. And then the final weapon that I really liked is the flamethrower, and I believe in order to get that, for Evil Dead 2, you have to kill the two flamethrower guys in Union, and they have a lot of health and they take a lot of damage, but if you kill both of them, you get both parts and you can make that, and then you can just light enemies on fire like a chicken rotisserie. It's pretty funny when you do something like that. And I'm glad that they have a weapon in there where it's like it's part of the element of the world where you have to basically, if you want it, you can go get it, but you have to fight two high power enemies to really grab it, or else you can run from them and you will never get it. And that's the thing. So you have to really choose wisely what you want to do, but I just end up killing them, stabbing them in the back all the time as much as I can. So it's pretty fun that they give you those options to do that. Next up is Nino. What do you think is your favorite weapon in Evil Dead 1 or 2?
Oh man, it's hard for me to choose just ones, but I'm never not going to love melee weapons, honestly. Something about the torch was kind of satisfying. I don't know if it counts as a weapon, but I just really enjoyed just using it to set everything ablaze in the first game, especially. And really great in a pinch when you are like down to 0 ammo and you just need something to have. But I also agree with, was it Ren that said the agony crossbow? That one's just so fun, and you can do so much with it. You can switch out the ammo. It's just really fun aiming with it. You can use it when you're like in the middle of your battle. You can kind of stealth up on somebody and use it. So probably overall, I think that would be my favorite.
Darkslayer, it is your turn. What do you think is your favorite weapon in Evil Within?
Man, let's see. So many tools of destruction. I think I'll have to agree with the melee weapons. The brass knuckles were completely fucking hilarious whenever just punched their heads off. That, and also it was one of the other really good magnums. It had like a laser sight on it. I forget what it's called, but yeah, I'm a good old fashioned magnum guy. You're like just playing through Leon's story over and over again in Resident Evil. But like any game that has a magnum option, I will absolutely take it. Just turns into the zombie exploder 3000, and I love it, especially when you upgrade it to the max. Uh, Other than that, like pretty much the bolt thrower, just all the bolts on it in general are just hilarious to use, especially when they just ragdoll from like the electrify ones or the bomb ones. They're just really fun to use. I think it's a really good addition to the second game.
Ben, it is your turn. What is your favorite weapons in Evil Within?
So I'm gonna echo both what Tolkien and Nino said, and I really like the agony crossbow. I am a person who enjoys a good weapon with an area of effect to it. And so, like, the explosive bolts in particular were a favorite of mine because there are a few times where there's a little bit, a few more enemies than I would like to be in my immediate vicinity. And it's always really nice to have something that can do a little bit of crowd control, which you can definitely do with the agony crossbow. So yeah, that was definitely my go-to weapon that I would run out of ammo the quickest when I played the games.
Interlucian, it is your turn. What is your favorite weapons in Evil Within?
Okay, I'm gonna about voice the same thing. I like the knuckles and the crossbow. I think one of the things I didn't like about the crossbow was there's this gas one. I think it was that one. But when it came to the first game, I do remember that crossbow was really helpful on Akumu, especially. So without that thing, I don't think I would have been able to beat Akumu.
Yeah, I'll add on slightly to the poisonous gas one. I don't remember if that came back for the second one or not. I guess someone can fact check that, but I remember if you shoot it, whatever's in the gas, it does damage over time, and if you upgrade it all the way, it goes like faster. From what I remember, it's one of the ones I did not use.
Yeah, I think the reason I did actually love that one is because enemies wouldn't be able to see, and you would just be able to get behind them and just stealth kill them instantly.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
why.
you're right
Yeah.
about that. You can just get behind them and keep stabbing them.
Yeah, I
Just
also
close
love
on.
the fact you can upgrade them and everything too.
Yeah, it was useful when you definitely got it upgraded and did your thing. But we're moving on to the next one, which is a little bit of an interesting and specific one. But Evil Within 2 introduced this sort of open environment aspect when exploring Union, and it had a lot more side content. I remember you could open up the communicator and go to certain places where there were lost people and they're trying to find their comrades, and you can go and pick up weapons. It was pretty interesting for the time. Do you think these aspects sort of hurt the game or helped it? Because there's always kind of these talks about open world horror games and how they're not really scary because they're wide open, they're not really done right. Do you agree it was done here well or no? And what is your opinion on that? And we will go with Nino first.
Okay. I honestly, at least at that time, in that instance, I liked that aspect of it less. It made, at least for me, it made the game feel like bloated. Like I kept getting lost all over the map, and then I feel like it was already intense enough, and I already was trying to conserve my ammo, and then I get lost, have to backtrack, have to fight all this other stuff, waste my ammo, and I was just getting really stressed and frustrated. So like for me, it didn't really work. I mean, I've seen it work well in other games, but just it just seems sparse. Like I think maybe they wanted to do more and just couldn't. So that was just my opinion. And I felt like it hurt a little bit, and it made me like the second game a little less because of that, until the story picked back up again, and then everything tightened back up, and you were back into a more linear path again. So that's just how I felt.
Dark Slayer, what about you? Do you think the open world aspect of this game hurt it or helped it?
I'm gonna say that, in my personal opinion, I enjoyed that just because I'm just a big like wanderer at heart. I just like looking and discovering stuff, especially in a horror game setting. I didn't think it didn't really like hurt it, but it wasn't really like a, I don't know. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad type thing. It was more of a like a mid type thing. Not to say that it was still like bad or anything. I think it was just exactly what it. I enjoyed it for exactly what it was. Guess I should say. I did enjoy doing the side missions that came along with it. Whenever you randomly came upon the echoes or wherever the hell they were of the previous soldiers that were there, and you had to use your radio to scan them. Couple of random things that happened that just happened upon just from looking around that I really liked that it connected to the first game. I forget what she's called. It was the version of Laura, but she was called something else. It was like I forget, but like I like that whole section entirely just because you don't have to do that. It is completely optional. But yeah, for me, I liked it for what it was. the open out of the game.
Tolkien, it is your turn. What do you think of the more open aspects of Evil Within 2? And do you think that helped the horror or hurt it?
Well, me personally, for horror games, once you have certain things in the game, I feel you're detracting from exactly what you want it to be, horror. Weapons is one thing. I think, as many people do, when you add weapons to a horror game, it can still be scary, yes, but not as scary as when you're left to your own devices with nothing. Outlast was perfect for that. I mean, that is the epitome of scary, when you have nothing but darkness and a camcorder and no weapons. Like, it's either hide, run, or you're getting fucked. Like, there's no other choice. And open world or open-ish world is another one. So for me, that's probably a big factor of why I like the first so much more, is ignoring the weapons, because they're in both. The open aspect of it just, for me, destroys anything that's scary. Sure, you still have your mobs and your bosses and your jump scares every once in a while, but to me, if you have an open area and you pop upon something that's scary, the instant you're able to run away and go across country, across a town, it's not scary anymore. Whereas in the first one, you know, you have your dark corridors and your lots of doors to go through where there's traps and mobs and you can't see everything, and it's so damn dark. And once you're in a room or with a boss, you cannot run away. You're stuck there. And to me, that's just way scarier and way more claustrophobic than making it open. Like I said, this is why Outlast did it so well. And they did the same thing, unfortunately, when you get to the second game. They made the sin of making it more open instead of a controlled area. And I felt Evil Within, they did that as well. And I wish they hadn't have. I don't think it's made it shit or anything. I still love the game. But this is why I like the first one much more than the second one.
All right, here's my take. I think that the first one has issues for differing reasons, which I'm gonna explain what they are in a later question. But as for if I think the horror was effective in this with the open world, it's up and down, really. As much as I am a person who enjoys open world games, I think I just favor to it a bit more because I like exploring places. And when you think of how horror games allow you to explore, this game does give you the option to do that. Like, just go off the beaten path, maybe try to get more ammo. But if you do get more ammo, or if you do try to get a gun, there's going to be a bunch of differing enemies in there. Like, I remember going to the Marrow Armory, which is the underground, to get the shotgun, and then you encounter the woman in white who, if you stab her in the head, she goes like berserk with a knife and comes after you. So there are some consequences to trying to go into every area, and I do think that if you're gonna do open world horror, you have to keep people on their toes as much as possible. But I think that also kind of slightly hurts the game, because it's like what was said before, if you run out of a certain location, the enemies will stop chasing you, and it's just, oh, that's like, oh, I got away, I guess. And it's like, I just wish that some of them were just a little bit more persistent. And I guess for those people that don't like it, persistence in horror is everything, because that kind of makes things a little bit scary. That makes things a little bit more tense to deal with. So I do get that aspect. However, in terms of doing a little bit more with the content itself and having these open areas, I do really like it, especially when you get events that start to happen and you don't really know what the hell's going on. When they change the scenario, they have that creature chasing you. I think her name is Anima. I forget her name, but it's the one where it's a giant woman, and if she grabs you, she sucks your soul out. I mean, for lack of better words, I'm sorry, that's what she does when she grabs you. That's how it says. Pause. Yeah, the slurp of death when she gives you that. And that changes when you revisit the house area a couple of times. You grab a key item, and then she appears and starts singing this song or humming. I'm like, what the hell is that? stuff like that is what you have to do. You have to introduce these new elements to make it really good, and I think that's the main thing that you need to do in games like this. Was it successful here? I think they did their thing and the game was enjoyable enough, but could there have been more? Maybe tightened it up a little bit. Yeah, I can see that aspect going into it, but it's not the slurp of death. Sorry, that's making me laugh so hard. But I'm gonna let Ren Ben go next on this one. Do you think the open world aspect to this game hurt it or helped it?
So I'm kind of in a little bit in between what both Tolkien said and what you said, because it was such a big difference from the way like that claustrophobic feel that you had in the first game. Because I remember there were several times in the first game where you were literally trapped in a room with an enemy. Particularly the keeper pops out in my mind. Whereas that wasn't necessarily the case as much in the second game. You would have hordes, like you had horde situations, but you didn't have that same claustrophobic feel. However, I did also enjoy some of the ways that they did it in the second game. It felt less like open world to me, as I would probably liken it a little more to like having hubs almost, because you had the system where you would go in between the computer consoles. So it was almost like having a series of hubs connected by these computer consoles. So it kind of had, in that way, it kind of reminded me a little bit more of like, say, a Resident Evil Village situation where you have a hub and then you're going to that place and then you're dealing with whatever's in that area. And then you go back to the other hub or you go to the next hub. It was definitely a big difference between the two games. I don't know that it necessarily hurt the second game, but I think it was something that was tried and that in hindsight could have maybe been executed better. But I don't know that I wouldn't say that it was a bad decision. It was an interesting decision that could be done better now with hindsight and other games that have tried and succeeded or tried and failed. And I think that's, I mean, and I know we're going to touch on it a little bit later, but I think that's why it's a bit of a bummer that we may or may not ever get that third game to kind of find out what they would have learned from the experience of having made two and how the successes and failures, etc. So I guess I'm kind of in between. I don't know that I'd necessarily call it a success or a failure in terms of the open world thing, but I think it was an interesting experiment that had both good points and bad points.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where if applied to a hypothetical third game, it would have had a lot of potential if they would have refined it, which we'll talk about that later because I have thoughts about that. Anyway, we're moving on to the next question, which is question number 7. When it comes to the substance and quality of these games, which one do you prefer the most? The first one or the second one? Explain your praise and criticisms between the two games. Ren Ben, I want you to go first.
Yay. So I think for me, I do prefer the first game. There was just something about the first game that stuck with me. The story was compelling. The monsters were terrifying, like we just talked about in the previous question. There were situations like those claustrophobic situations where you were trapped with the monster and you were like, oh my god, I got to figure out how to get out of this. And not only were you trying to figure out how to either defeat the monster and get away or just solve some kind of puzzle so that you could get out of that room or move to the next segment so that you could get away from that, whatever that situation you were in, so you could progress. And there was just something about the way that those elements were executed in the first game that I particularly enjoyed. The second game, and I guess I'd say, like, that's not to say that I dislike the second game. I also love the second game. And I understand why many people enjoy the second game and love the second game more than the first game. But I think for me, the first game just hit the survival, like for me, it just hit that survival horror button in ways that I thought were better than the second game. Um, and actually, now that I think about it, part of that may in fact be similar to what Tolkien said in the previous question. The fact that there were those very tight claustrophobic situations. It felt more, you felt a little more desperation. You felt a lot more anxiety. And then there was, of course, like we've talked about, the fact that the story in the first game was a little more confusing at first. You know, you were really going like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? How is this going to resolve? What is going on? Oh my God, why are there eyes everywhere? So, you know, and that was, that has just stuck with me a lot more, I think, than the second game did. So yes, the confusion definitely worked. A horror is one of those genres where I don't mind being confused because I know eventually I'm going to find out the answer, but the confusion is part of the journey. And I think the first game handled that a little bit more to my liking than the second game did.
Tolkien, what do you feel about this question?
I think I've pretty much laid out what I think in previous answers. I prefer the first one, even though I like both. I think there are some things the second does perhaps slightly better than the first. I think the first one has better atmosphere, better, quote, horror aspect to it, better villains, better story. Whereas I know they changed the movement, added more weapons, and a little bit better combat feel, I guess, in the second one. I know that was a lot of complaint from people in the first one that it was janky, which, I mean, I like jank. So, but for me, when it comes to a horror game, sure, I like combat. I like movement. But the story, the atmosphere, how it makes you feel. If it makes you feel like it's a scary horror game to me, then it's going to win out. So therefore, first one for me has to win because of those two premises over the second.
All right, I'll go next. I do not favor the first one over the second one, and I will explain why. It's some stuff from mostly a gameplay premise or whatever, because the atmosphere is super great. But when you have bosses that do one-hit kills out of nowhere, I think that is garbage design. I did not like that at all. And that was one of my major problems with the first game. I'm kind of glad they balanced out the major fights that you do in the second one. So they made it where if you get critical one-shotted by a boss, that's mostly due to you being on like danger health, and I thought that was the preferable way to do it, versus just some snake boss choking you out of nowhere and you're dead. That's it. Maybe the trial and error will appeal to a lot of other people, but I thought it was kind of cheap in certain segments. As for everything else, there is some jankiness to the combat. I feel like that mechanic they tried to pull off with burning bodies is kind of weird. Because I swear, I had moments where I dropped a match on one of the bodies of the enemies and they did not burn, and I'm thinking to myself, what in the hell is going? I swear I was like right next to him and the body did not burn, and he got up and choked me to death. And I was on a Kumu when this happened, and I remember getting really mad about it because I was like, I pressed the button and he's dead. He's not dead. Never mind. So that's another reason why I didn't like that. And then let's see, you know, the bottles were also kind of janky too. And I remember like most of the things where you throw a bottle, you hit someone in the head, and you can get like a free knife stab, sometimes at a whiff or whatever. And I also did not like traps being like spread out everywhere. And I played this game when it was available without letterboxing. Therefore, I thought it was kind of annoying that I'm looking at the ground for traps and everything, and I'm just running through, and sometimes due to that black screen that's there, it's kind of hard to see bear traps on the ground versus something like RE4 where it's like you can see the whole screen, and I didn't like that either. There's just too many weird gameplay aspects that make me go, it's kind of why I prefer the second one over the first one. Oh, one more thing that I didn't like about the first one: enemies with guns. I do not find them scary, and I will even knock Resident Evil 4 off as a point for this. Whenever an enemy has a gun or a crossbow or AK-47 like they did in RE5, I'm just not scared anymore because I'm like, what is this? This guy is like a criminal off the street at this point, and he's shooting an AK-47 at me. I'm not scared of this whatsoever. So I do like that the second one kind of brought in the fact that we have traditional enemies with like long tentacles. Maybe some of them look like cum monsters. That's besides the point. I don't know what else to describe them as. It's kind of weird, but that's what the loss looks like. And it's just, at least there's no enemies with guns in the second one, so I can tolerate that a little bit more. But like I said, the atmosphere of the first one, incredible. The scares is pretty good, but some of the gameplay aspects is kind of weird in my personal opinion, and I'm a gameplay guy, therefore that's why I feel what I feel. Well, I still love both games in their own right. It's just it was some room for improvement for the first one. Moving on to Nino, what do you think of this question? Do you prefer Evil Within 1 or 2?
I prefer 1. I think I mentioned that before too, but I just love that it throws you in the middle of things, kind of hits the pedal like immediately and doesn't really ever relent. And just like you're trying to figure out what's going on, but it doesn't really even give you that much time to figure it out. You're just kind of going through everything with Sebastian as he's going through it. And the amount of times he's saying what the fuck, and me in my living room with my controller, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. What the fuck is happening? So like it was just amazing to me. I'm trying to think, like, when you're trapped in that village and surrounded by haunted, getting cornered in that barn with your first battle, and those things kick the door down, and it's just the tension and the fear was just overwhelming, and I loved that. There were so many times I'd have to pause the game because like my whole body was shaking, but then I'd go back, tell myself I'm big and brave, I can do this, I can do all things, and then I just jump back into it. I do have to disagree with Shinigami Ren. I like the one-hit bosses. They pissed me off to no end. There were many times where I would like say like a 12-word combo breaker, streak of swear words, and have to walk away for a minute, come back. But then I would just adjust my strategy, keep going and then I would just feel like a lot of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not vindication, but it was very satisfying when I finally did beat them. And also just loved all the enemies. Everything was terrifying. Laura, especially the first time you encounter her, I meant to mention her earlier, but when she just bursts out of the ground screaming, there's nothing quite like that, especially when you're wearing headphones and playing at night. It was just fear. No one ever really forgets the first time they meet Laura in the game. I will say I kind of like janky controls, so that didn't really bother me that much with the first game. I kind of grew up with tank controls, so I'm used to jank. Wait, that doesn't. I'm used to janky controls. I don't know. That's maybe, let's rephrase. But and I also like actually really enjoyed the ending and art style of 2. I say that like even though I prefer 1 over 2, I really liked the story they were telling in 2. It felt like it meandered at times, and I felt like that took away from the total quality of the game for me. But I just really enjoyed watching what Sebastian would do, not in a way like, yeah, I enjoyed that, but just the way he was designed as a character, the way he did what he did to the other people in the game. It was just really something visceral and horrifying, and it reminded me a lot of the Hannibal TV show, like this is my design type of style to it. So yeah, I guess that's my pros and cons on that one, on both of them.
All right, before I move on to the next person, I guess I'll be the resident Evil Within one hater today. But it's all love. Like I said, I do like the game, but some of the trial and error was just and I also like they fixed this too in the second one, but the sprint when you get all the way tired and you just stop and Sebastian takes like a quarter mile to catch his breath. I'm kind of glad they actually did fix that. That was running away from the amalgam was annoying with that sort of aspect into the game, so I'm glad they fixed it. But next up is Enderlucian. How do you feel about Evil Within 1 and 2, and which one do you prefer?
So I mean, Evil Within 2 is my personal favorite. But going to Evil wait, it was the wait, was the gameplay? Okay, it was the gameplay we're talking about?
Yes, and
Gameplay.
story too.
Okay.
Just in general, which one do you prefer over the other?
Like okay. Yeah, so I say overall I would enjoy 2 better, but one does have one thing I do love about 1 it does have that classic survival horror take on it. 2's different because you had that letterbox mode in 1 that was I don't think there was an option to remove that back on the PS3, but it just brought more the aesthetic with that. uh and yeah, I mean, 1, I love it for the survival horror aesthetic. 2, gameplay, more story in my eyes at the very least. And I didn't get to talk about this, but I did love that a little bit of open world gameplay in 2. That is one thing I did like about it. Because I'm like a collector type of guy, and just going around and trying to like find all the statues and everything. And there was a bunch of like Easter eggs like from Bethesda games. Like I don't know if anybody mentioned that. You can find those around too. That was some cool things you can find, like some Dishonored ones and some Pit Boy and all that. Uh, but I think 2 also had like a really fun mini game I liked as well. It was like that shooting gallery mini game. I like that they also added that as well. But that's all I got.
Oh yeah, that was cool. You mentioned that. I think they made a reference to Hercules where he says, "I thought I was better than that." Disappointed. I thought that was very funny when he yelled that. It was pretty cool. But yeah, the mini game stuff that they added into was kind of fun, and I will praise the first one for some of the references they had as well. I think the zombie head turning thing from Resident Evil is in the first chapter of the game when you go to the crashed ambulance and you see the guy turn his head slightly. I was just like, oh, that looks familiar. That's straight out of Resident Evil. That was kind of cool actually when you saw that. So I will praise the first one for that. I was like, oh, I get that reference. I understand. But next up is Dark Slayer. What do you prefer, Evil Within 1 or 2? And explain your reasoning. If he is here. Oh, okay.
I'm here. my button wouldn't click, but yeah. So I definitely, when it comes between 1 and 2, I definitely prefer 2, just because I really enjoyed how the story unfolded and just the character development that happened into went on. It just seemed like more theatrical and more like a more enjoyable like horror movie experience to me, just in a game. Especially when it got towards the end, it just turned into a whole like Michael Bay film. I was like, this kind of dope actually. But I would say some of my dislikes from the game, they're like just small like random details that happened to me while I was playing it. Like I think I heard you talking about the matches from the first game. where you where sometimes you try to light a body on fire and the match just straight up didn't work. So you just end up wasting matches for no reason. Of Another aspect I didn't really like is that you can't crouch when you're like waist deep of like what it wasn't even like waist deep, it was like up to your knees in like blood or wherever stage you're in. So like a lot of times when I try to avoid the bombs, uh I I forget that I can't crouch, so I end up blowing myself apart trying to disarm them. The mini games were funny though, just from failing them because it was so abrupt. You just turned to like ragu. But other than that, uh, I feel like I just enjoyed the story of the second game more and the mechanics, um, and everything rolling up into one, like the open world aspect, the enemies, the characters. Yeah, if it came down to it, I definitely played through the second game more than I've played the first one. Absolutely.
The chat is funny. The first thing I said was girls have cooties because a lot of people prefer Evil Within 1 over 2. And then the boys prefer 2 over 1. So it's like being in debate club all over again. It's all good. We're moving on to the next question, and this is another interesting one. What is your favorite and least favorite enemy or boss? And both Evil Within games can count here. I'm gonna start with Tolkien first.
All right. Well, I'm gonna cheat a little because I'm gonna pick like a favorite from both and least favorite from both, or whatever. But favorites from one, I definitely like the Keeper, and of course, I think everybody's gonna say Laura. I mean, I used to call her Spider Lady. That's all I ever used to call her as. I think the Keeper is just super cool. He always gave me like the Pyramid Head vibes. You know, your camera starts flashing and he just appears out of nowhere. He just has that aura that Pyramid Head does in your Silent Hill game. And then, of course, you know, Laura was just, as was stated earlier, you just don't forget the first time you meet Laura and she just comes out of the ground and she shows up at the least expected times, like before your boss battle with her. You go into this room, you see stuff on the floor, there's a locker you can open for items, and you're like, oh, cool, some stuff, you know, and you start to go over toward it. And she just pops out of the ground randomly, just shrieking, and you're like, what the fuck? And you just panic and run out of the room away from her, and then it's just straight up craziness. And I remember the first time you have to beat her as a boss, I had to have my friend beat her for me because I like have arachnophobia so bad. And she just triggered it for me. And I was like, I can't with this lady. She's got too many hands, too many arms. She's too creepy. Crawls on the ground like a spider. I said, I can't do this shit. But she's so good. I love her design. I like what she stands for Ruvik. Holy cow. But for the second one, I think I liked the Watcher and the Guardian. The Watcher, I think, had a cool design. I know everybody has their weird memes and names for it. It just looks like a blob of candle wax. And I like that your encounter with them, you have to pretty much decide, do I want to spend the ammo and kill it? Or do I want to be methodical and sneak around, which takes more time? So you're given a choice. And then the Guardian, of course, you know, is a giant mishmash of all the women that Stefano has murdered. And then they have the saws on their arm and they just chase you around. It's just genuinely really creepy. They're just tall and formidable. I think least favorite for the first game for me was the final boss. And it's not necessarily because it's a design thing. It's more like me personally in horror games, and I think Resident Evil is probably what hurt me the most with this, is I loathe games that have the giant monstrous bosses at the end of the game. It just annoys me for whatever reason. I just hate having these things that you have to have a rocket launcher to kill it, or you have to have this gimmick to kill it, and they're just so large and obscure the whole screen. And I never understood the point, and so many games do it now. Like every Resident Evil has this at the end of their game. When I finally played Dead Space Remake, and I had never played the original before, and I played Dead Space Remake, and I get to the end of it, and I'm like, God damn it, they did the same thing that Resident Evil does, and I hate this shit. And then they did it in both Evil Withins. I'm like, oh my God, please stop doing this with the giant monster bosses. Like, just do something normal, please. Like, I get they're supposed to be formidable, and they're big, but it's just like, bruh, I don't know. I just don't find them that cool. Gimmicky bosses usually I'm okay with, but when you put in the large and the gimmick, and it's just like, I don't know. To me, it's just kind of lame. So yeah, that'd probably be my answer for my least favorite for the second as well, is the last boss. Like, all the other ones were cool in design. I don't think she had a bad design either, but it's just large, gimmicky, and it's just, I don't know. It just doesn't end well for me like that. But even so, they're all very well designed. I don't think there was one I truly hated. It's just one little reason why I don't like the last ones.
Nino, it is your turn. What is your favorite and least favorite monster or creature or boss at Evil Within?
Well, favorite, I have to agree with what was said earlier. Laura / Keeper tiebreaker for me, honestly. I know I mentioned before earlier, like, you never really forget your first time seeing her and her scaring the living shit out of you. Anytime she popped up, anytime I anticipated that she was popping up, anytime it got too quiet in the game and I thought she might pop up, it was just unrelenting overall tension of, is this really going to be the last time I see her? When is she going to show up again? When is my nightmare going to be over? Similar feelings to the Keeper. When it was described as like Pyramid Head-esque, that's the same type of feeling I get from the Keeper. I don't know if it's just because they both really like rusty cages for their heads. Maybe that's part of the similarity, but just him as an entity, being, person, thing, just really creeped me out, especially when you're stuck in that like almost construction, like, was it the underground catacomb type area with him, and he was like teleporting. I don't know what was going. It was just really trippy before you really knew what was going on overall with the game, and you couldn't figure out how he was able to do that. And also the first time his little mask popped open and you saw whatever was going on in there, and it became somehow worse than it already was. So those probably would be my favorites overall. I guess, like, if I have to give a least favorite, I feel like it's another tiebreaker between, as much as I was talking about, I like Stefano and what he does. It doesn't sound right either, but you know what I mean in the game, like him as a concept. I think Stefano and Ruvik might be my least fave, or even if he's not a boss or an enemy or a villain, can I say Dr. Marcelo Jimenez? Because I really did not like that dude the whole way through. Like, you knew he was up to no good, even though he wanted your help. And I just really did not like that dude at all. He was not as smart as he thought he was. But I think with Ruvik and Stefano, I think maybe just my theme is I don't like characters that think too highly of themselves or are a little too pompous for their own good. But I also do see the point of what Ruvik was doing and why he did it. So he's maybe less on my least fave list than the other two I named.
All right, I'm gonna go on this one. Creature, boss, enemy that I didn't like. I'm gonna start with two because I think that's very simple. I'll start with least favorite first. Theodore sucks. I just don't think that it goes into the character and everything. I just think that after Stefano and having this weird fire priest be so indoctrinated into religion, it didn't really do it for me. I thought the environment started to look cool with the flame enemies, but then even they're annoying in the game when you get close to them, and you get all this fire damage and whatnot, and then you have to wait until their fire like dissipates so you can do damage. It's just that part of the game is when the enemies start to really get annoying, and I think most people can agree, like even if you really like to, that's when stuff starts getting like weird in terms of enemy presentation. And I think that Theodore could have been a lot better in terms of that. His boss fight isn't really that memorable to me either. I just remember going in there, he does some flames, teleports, and then I just shotgunned his face off until he died. That was really not that great. I wish he was more compelling, so he's one of my least favorites. Into one of my favorite fights in the second game, I'm gonna actually say I did like the Stefano fight simply because I liked it. They tried to do something different with a humanoid psycho killer, and he's throwing all these knives, and I think one cool part of the fight is when you hurt him and he starts to get angry, and just the whole entire arena just dissipates and explodes, and there's these cubes that can hurt you, and everything starts going crazy, and there's this big eyeball like throwing stuff at you and trying to hit you with the tentacle. The fight just goes batshit insane, and I think that is really good. That's what I wanted the Theodore fight to be, just absolutely balls to the wall. And then I guess the other fight that I really did enjoy was these giant creatures that I can't describe them without calling them cum creatures. I'm sorry, but it's one of them that has a light pole like stuck through them, and you're fighting like two of them, and it's a really challenging fight later on. It's when you get close to Myra and her surroundings and everything, and I think they basically nailed that fight pretty well, even though it's very hard. Is one of the few trial and error moments in the game that is, you know, interesting when you overcome it. Not to be punny, but that's true. Either way, let's move to the first one. A boss I did not like. That's so fucking funny. A boss I didn't like was the Amalgam Alpha. I hate this thing. There's no redeeming qualities about it whatsoever, in my personal opinion, outside of how creepy it looks. It's the giant boss you fight in the car park, and he has that whole thing where he turns purple, and he could do that one hit swallow you up with the Sebastian sort of thing. It's just I don't like the boss all that much. They have these like safe rooms that you can run into and get some weapons and hurry up and get out, but he takes so much goddamn ammo. I swear, it's, if you just even think of going to the next part of this section without wasting a bunch of ammo, you are sorely mistaken, unless you have special weapons on or the rocket launcher. In the first playthrough, he fucked me up, and I just don't like the general concept of the fight itself in these small rooms, and you run into them and you have no safe haven afterwards. It's hard to run. It's just weird. I just don't like it that much. For an enemy that I did enjoy, or a boss, I'm gonna say Laura. That's one of the sections where I think the trial and error worked, because the only way you can hurt her, and it kind of goes into her lore as well, because that's how she died. She was set on fire in the barn, is to set her on fire, and there's these little pipes you have to shoot that's around, or you could use the lighter, the matches, to sort of set her on fire sometimes too. And it's just this whole chase of her trying to get you, and you not trying to get one hit killed, and you're shooting these valves, and it's absolutely insane. It's a crazy fight, but for what the fight presents, I think it actually works out really well, because you're thinking, oh shit, am I gonna get hit, or am I gonna get grabbed, or am I gonna get killed? I gotta juke around this way. Oh, I can't also go into the fire as well, because if I do that, I'm gonna get burned. So it creates this like barrier. Maybe she can get around to the other side, and you're just panicking, you're freaking out, man. And it's probably one of those moments in the game where you're going, damn, this was actually very, very well constructed. I did like her fight very much. And that is my favorite bosses so far. I can't really think of enemies outside of the Anima in 2 that I enjoyed, and that weird creature in 2 with like, she looks like a shrieking lady, and she has like several thousand arms. It's not due to the fact that her gameplay has any significant weight, because you can easily kill those things with a knife, no problem, even sneak behind them. But the way they look and the way they shamble towards you, it's like, ugh, you don't want to see them in a dark corridor or a dark corner. And I believe seeing those creatures was the scariest part of the second one, because they're in the sewers and it's dark as fuck, and you see gas and you're like, oh no. Oh no, it's them. So honorable mention for those enemies scaring the bejesus out of me, because I was really terrified during that part. But that is it for favorite and least favorite enemies for me. I'm going to go with Dark Slayer next. Do you have any favorite, least favorite enemies? And
Let's see. I think going off of what you said just before, my favorite enemies from the just going off the second game is those shriekers. Probably the most horrifying creatures in the game. I'm not gonna lie to you, comparatively to everything else that's there. Like those creatures were the main ones I was mainly looking out for because they scared the hell out of me. Also, they kind of have a weird random acid attack that I didn't know until like way later. Oh, but yeah, my least favorite is definitely Theodore. Theodore was such garbo because he's like, I get where they're trying to go with it, about him being a fire priest. It was kind of random, I'm not gonna lie. And then like his boss fight was ultimately just a boss rush of the first three main bosses in the first game. Um, so it was kind of trash in that manner. But other than that,
all right, let's see. Ren Ben, did you go?
I have not.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna say what a lot of other people said, and Laura is just too unforgettable to not say that she's one of my favorites. There's just nothing quite like that first time she scares the absolute piss out of you. I remember I wasn't expecting it, and the one I think Tolkien mentioned it, where she comes up out of the floor. I wasn't expecting it, and it scared the crap out of me, and you didn't have anywhere to run, and I panicked, and then she smashed my head in the ground. I have a clip of it somewhere. Like, I'm just like, what just happened? I don't know, it just happened. That said, I'm going to give an honorable mention to the Haunted, because they were a little smarter than I was used to the AI like NPC creatures being in games. Like, I remember they were able to, yes, they were very smart. Like, I remember there was one time I thought I was being so cool as Kidman. I was like, I got in the locker in time and I saw him come shambling into the room, and I'm like, they don't know where I am. Then, oh shit, they know where I am, and they yanked me out of the locker, and I was like, how are they this smart? But yeah, so honorable mention to them because they were terrifying. And but for least favorite, I do think I have to agree with what everybody's been saying about Theodore. Like, it just, and part of that is just coming from the fact that, much the same as Ren, like, I just don't really remember much about that fight. That's like, it just did not stick in my head. And in a game where you have so many memorable monsters and bosses, it's stiff competition, but also at the same time, like, I remember pretty much all of them except for him. I just yes, exactly. I kind of just disliked him so much that I also forgot he existed. I'm gonna go with that. Also, yeah, again, shout out to Stefano, because that boss also freaked me out. I think I have a lot more bosses and enemies that I liked in the games than ones that I was like, ugh. Which is ironic considering how grotesque some of those monsters and bosses are in the Evil Within game. But yeah, definitely favorite would be Laura. Honorable mention to the Haunted in the first game. The least favorite, sorry, Father Theodore, but not sorry at all.
Interlucian, it is your turn. Do you have any favorite enemies, bosses, etc.?
So for me, I'm gonna go with everybody else on Laura. I mean, it actually fits in with the lore. That's one thing I do like it. And as you mentioned, Ren, it actually works. And it just makes boss fight better in that aspect. When it comes to the first evil within, my least favorite, I think it has to be that last boss fight. It's not like, from what I remember when I was doing my, like the Ruvik one, I think it was, yeah, Ruvik. Correct. Yeah, it was just so easy compared to everything else on Akumu. It was like, wow, I got here and this so easy. When it comes to evil with honorable mention, I mean, I like the beginning segment of the game. I don't know if anybody's mentioned the sadist. I think that's the, I mean, he's a pretty cool the guy with the chainsaw. He's not too bad. I like chapter 3 for that. Evil Within 2, there was a lot of enemies in that one that I did like, just with that overall Stefano vibe and his masterpieces. Let's see, my least favorite, Theodore. I don't even remember what goes on in that fight. And I'd say my most favorite is Stefano. I was playing Nightmare difficulty and I was having issues. I don't know if anybody remembers, but there's an ability where when you're aiming down sight, you can actually freeze time. I had to use that like throughout the Stefano fight, and it has like a cooldown. But yeah, I was struggling so hard on that one. I had to use that ability. But just that whole how that whole fight went out with like just where it took place, and Ren mentioned everything just falls apart and everything. I mean, he's the core reason for how the majority of the enemies are how they are in the second game, like bunch of different body parts. And then that screaming enemy, the one with like no arms, or I don't know. Yeah, that one was scary, but yeah, I think that's all I got.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next question, and that is, what are your thoughts on STEM as a concept? Where they get into the machine, they see all these digitized creatures, and they can actually die within the machine itself, and some imprints can be put on people's minds as well. What do you think of it? And we will start with Nino first.
I mean, I thought it was okay as a concept. It wasn't the most original thing I had seen in the world of horror by that point, just because I grew up watching a lot of sci-fi horror and things in that world of what if, or what if we were attached to machines, or what if we are the machine, or what if what happens in the machine happens in real life and stuff like that. So I did like what they did with it within the story though, but STEM itself was just kind of there as the vehicle to give the rest of the story, and that's kind of all I really thought of it overall.
I guess it's my turn. I'm gonna try to keep this brief, but I heard the best description for what STEM is. I believe I was scrolling the Evil Within Reddit and I saw this comment, and someone literally said that STEM is what will happen if you take all the dreams from Nightmare on Elm Street and The Matrix, you put those two together and they have a baby, and that's what STEM is. And I was like, that's actually a brilliant comment because that is so fucking true that it explains the core of what Evil Within is. It's like a Nightmare on Elm Street Matrix all rolled into one. And I do agree, it's not the most original concept ever in fiction. We've seen this before. What if this is real or false? And then we've also seen the weird nightmare aspects of stuff in general. Like, you see it at Silent Hill. They have an otherworld, for God's sake. I do think for the game and what it does and the mystery that it has in the first one, because you're thinking something's wrong, but you can't really pinpoint it. You just think that Ruvik's like doing everything and fucking with your mind, but clearly it's a lot more bigger stakes. There's Mobius, they have you hooked up to the machine. If you die in there, you're just dead. You're lost, or you turn into haunted. And it's kind of a scary premise when you think about what's occurring to the people, because from what I remember, even if your brain dies, the haunted are still hooked up and still alive, but they just might be brain dead. And that's a really scary premise, because at that point they have no more control over their body and they're just wandering around like lost people. And it's kind of frightening when you put it in that perspective. But I think it's all right. So I have to agree, definitely not original, and they just conjured this up for the game, but it does keep you intrigued enough to know what's going on. I think the imprinting of thoughts and memories and characters is the most interesting part about it, because I think that is why Tatiana, who is a weird nurse or whatever, that's why you see her in the other STEM for Evil Within 2, even though it's a completely different machine. It's like, oh, why are you here? And he's like, maybe I'm just part of your core memories, and this is like why I'm here. I've physically manifested myself here. And you can tell there's other creatures as well that haunt Sebastian that came from the first one, which is why they constantly appear, and you see some of them appear in the second game. So I thought that was a nice way to say, oh, this is how we bring back these other creatures, even though it's a different STEM entirely. Next up is Tolkien. What do you think about this with the concept of STEM?
Yeah, I don't have too much to say either. Pretty much has been said already. I played the game as a teenager, and as a teenager, you don't think usually too hard about the story or the concept, and the idea of someone using a brain to take over other people and controlling what they see and having all these horrors and stuff. You think then when you're younger, you're like, oh my god, that's really cool, and it's actually really scary. And then you get to be freaking, I feel ancient, you get to be my age, and you're like, oh man, that ain't that awesome of a concept. It's like, look at how technology has advanced now. I wouldn't be shocked if some kooky idea like this actually becomes the future. I don't know. I mean, it was interesting enough, and the way the game was played out, and the story and the mystery and trying to figure out what's going on and the characters, you don't really think too hard about STEM itself, and that it really ain't a mind-blowing concept, but everything around it was so good that you don't really focus on that. So
Reverend Ben, it is your turn. What do you think of the concept of STEM?
So, kind of the same as what everybody's been saying. I didn't, even though I played it as as an adult and old when I was older, I didn't think too much about it. I think I thought of it just kind of as the vehicle to propel the story along. I do agree with what Nino said, that it was used in a way and executed very well. Because it does have a little bit of the the kind of like that Sword Art Online, like if you die in the simulation, you die in real life, or you become a haunted or a lost. But other than that, I didn't think too much about it. I did think it was kind of interesting that it was essentially supposed to be a key element in a plan for world domination. That was interesting to me because it's not how I would necessarily go about doing world domination, but hey, that was what Mobius thought was cool. But yeah, otherwise, it was not a new concept, but executed in a good way. Very similar to what Nino said.
Dark Slayer, it is your turn. What do you think of the concept of STEM?
Pretty much just in a similar fashion of what everyone else is saying. I think it was pretty interesting going forward, story wise. I finally remember what the movie was that reminded me of. It was called The Cell. Basically, FBI agents go into the mind of a comatose serial killer, and it was the visuals and the tone of it was very much like this, in Evil Within. So I think that's a pretty cool concept. Kind of a very, very not smart plan to have for world domination, because you're like, yeah, let's all hook ourselves into this one thing with serial killers too. Like, wait, what? Like, their thoughts bleed into there too. Like that's one thing. You experience your own dreams and nightmares, but experiencing someone else's is a whole different like can of worms you do not want to open. But other than that, just to push the plot along, I think it was pretty interesting. Um, Especially with the whole splice of almost like uh, like was mentioned earlier, combination of the Matrix and the what you call it, Nightmare on Elm Street. I think that was a very perfect description of that as well.
Yeah, it's
So,
like
yeah,
they
awesome.
mashed two things together and they say, you know what? Evil Within, here it is right here. I was like, God damn.
It's like let's have two nightmare scenarios just combined into one. Here's the game.
Yeah. Enderlucian, did you go on this question yet?
I did not.
What do you think of STEM?
So, I mean, it's not new as it was mentioned before, but for a video game, I'd say it was well executed. Just being in this environment that you die in, it literally basically puts you in a situation where you're gonna die, like in the real world, right? That's how it works.
Your
Yeah.
brain is dead, but you wander around as a haunted or lost if you die in the machine.
Oh.
So you're dead in real
Oh,
life.
I didn't know that.
But
Okay.
in the machine, you're a creature.
That's actually unique. Wow. But yeah, just the amount of things that are created, like the haunted and everything, all the enemies, it's just all unique, and it's better than going in like a real world thing scenario and you're like, okay, we're just in the real world here. I wish there was like more scenarios outside of STEM, maybe for like lore outside, but I mean it was honestly really unique and I did like it.
So I'm gonna have Tolkien host the next question because I have to go to the bathroom. But Tolkien, could you read that off, please?
Sure. So we are on number 10. How do you feel about the general gameplay of Evil Within 1 and 2? And what was your least favorite segments between both games? We will go Enderlucian first since you went last.
So general gameplay. I mean, when it comes to one, I mean Sebastian at the very beginning. When it comes to the upgrade system, like going into the game, he really didn't have much sprint, so he was kind of really, you need to get these upgrades in and everything, which is okay because you can improve Sebastian. And I mean he's not completely overpowered, which is also a good thing because you do have a you do have all these weapons on you too and everything. I did love the how you can burn the corpses as well. And if you do gather like a haunted or an enemy right next to a corpse, when you do burn them, it is actually going to burn that enemy as well. That's also a really cool thing about that. But yeah, there's nothing else on 1 when it comes to 2. I mean, 2 had some improvements on that aspect. I mean, sprinting was longer. There was more upgrades, like the freeze frame one when you're aiming downside and everything. But yeah, I think that's about it. I wish I really went back to the games, but that's all I can recall.
Ben, it is your turn. What do you think of the gameplay between Evil Within 1 and 2, and cite some things that you liked, didn't like?
So we've kind of touched on it a little bit in some of the other questions, but you know, the controls and the way the way the first game handles is a little bit, I guess you could say, like a little bit jankier. It definitely feels like a bit of a, you know, like how I kind of expected a survival horror game to work. It was definitely interesting to go from a more recent game to the Evil Within in terms of the controls. But in terms of the gameplay, I really enjoyed it. In general, I enjoyed, I mean, I enjoyed both of them. They were both third person, over the shoulder style games, but I thought they were really fun. In terms of like favorite and least favorite segments, you mentioned one of my favorite segments earlier, Ren, the fight with Laura with the pipes where you had to light her on fire. Oh my god, that part stressed me out so bad, but it also just has stuck with me so much. You know, even all the, you know, even years later after having played it for the first time, like the tension and the way that you know, you had to kind of think on the fly. You were thinking about so many multiple elements at the same time on top of just trying not to die. And I think that was handled in such a cool way, and I enjoyed the gameplay of that. And if I remember right, were they 2 different segments where there was one where you were in a boiler room with her, and then there was the one where you were in the room with the fences. And I can't remember off the top of my head if they were two different segments or if they were like one segment went into the other. But either way, like a lot of the gameplay in particular with Laura, where there were like stalker enemy elements and there were problem solving elements, and there were just so many things that were put into one segment that I thought was super cool. I honestly can't think of a least favorite segment, although I will say with the second game I did not enjoy the trying to find people with the radio as much, because I'll admit it may have been a skill issue. I did have trouble with, I felt like the radio it wasn't always easy to pick up a signal and end up actually going in the right direction. Like I would point it in a direction that I thought I was supposed to go, and then the signal would just die. And I'm like, I thought I was going in the right direction. And I always felt that, like a little, I don't know. That was less enjoyable for me. But overall, I enjoy the slightly janky nature of the games, especially with 1. I think it's more prominent in 1 than in 2. But I like a little bit of jank in my horror games. So yeah.
Falcon, it is your turn. What do you think of the gameplay of Evil Within in general between 1 and 2?
I like the gameplay, as we've said many times. I enjoyed both. Certain things were better in 1 over 2, vice versa. But game mechanic wise or style wise, I don't really think I had too many complaints. Sometimes I think I'm just too easy to please when it comes to games. It takes a lot for me to hate something. But as far as like the jank from one, I know a lot of people will bring it up. Fans of the game will say, "Oh my god, the controls were so jank," and I'm just like, yeah, okay, but you're looking at a game that came out now 11 to 12 years ago. Of course it was jank. Like, look at the games that came out around that time too. Like, you can't compare something from 2013, 2014, then go, well, look at how Resident Evil 8 had their gameplay. Well, no fucking shit. You're looking at a decade later. And comparisons like that drive me crazy. It's just like, but this is what makes the game so memorable and enjoyable for a lot of people is the jank, the unique movement and gameplay of it. Just reminds me a little bit of the new Alone in the Dark that came out like 2 years ago or whatever. And I loved the game. Played the whole thing, plat it, loved it. Never played the old ones. But like the biggest complaint I saw people giving that game was, oh, it doesn't have the same gunplay or the same movement as Resident Evil. And I'm like, no, because if you want to play something with Resident Evil movement, go fucking play Resident Evil then. But you can't expect every survival horror game to have the same thing as the popular ones. You gotta be different. Give me the jank. I like the different stuff. I like the different movements. I don't like everything being the same. But even so, for the first Evil Within, I think one of my favorite areas was being in the Victoriano estate. You got to explore. There was lots of stealth. There were the puzzles. You had to do the brain puzzles where you had to stick the probe in the right part of the brain. Ruvik would show up and you would have to hide or escape from him numerous times. And it was just like you're running all over like this mansion, figuring out more lore, finding this obvious but kind of hidden, really long fireplace to get to a new section. And it was just all like super interesting, and I really, really liked that. Least favorite part is just probably I want to call it the highway fight. When you have the giant freaking creature chasing you when you're in the school bus. And just the whole thing just annoyed me, because then you get to the end and you're like, oh, you have to go find this very specific thing in an ambulance for Joseph. And like, I feel like stealth just gets thrown out the window, and you're like, there's mobs everywhere and they're throwing grenades and they're shooting things at you and everything's exploding and it's just chaos, and you finally get what you need and you're trying to make your way back. Then there's like this mob and you're supposed to keep them all away from the bus from Kidman. So you have to get on this military truck and use a machine gun. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And like, you went total 180 from the rest of what I was doing this whole game. Like, I don't know. I just found it kind of meh, not super good like everything else. I don't really think I have a favorite for the second game. I pretty much liked most of the areas, except, of course, as I've stated earlier, I don't necessarily like open world-ish or more open areas. I lose the horror. It's not as scary. When a monster shows up and it freaks me out for a quick second, all I gotta do is just split and run the other direction, and then it's not scary anymore. But yeah, otherwise, I like both. Good and bad for both, but yeah.
Nino, how about you? What do you think of the gameplay segments between Evil Within 1 and 2?
For me, I feel like I really don't have a lot of gameplay issue complaints. Just like a lot of other people said, I like the jankiness of it. I kind of cut my teeth on janky controls in games. Like I played, like thinking back to the original Resident Evil that came out in like mid 90s and the original Silent Hill that came out in 99, and those types of controls. I honestly prefer, I wish more games would do over the shoulder third person versus everything being all first person everything. Like first person doesn't really scare me. It just, I don't know, it doesn't really just, it makes me nauseous more than it scares me. So I honestly like the third person, like that lack of total control that you get from that point of view. Favorite segment, I'm gonna also agree with everyone and say Laura. Laura's my favorite. I love that boss fight in the boiler room. I love that you had to think on your feet while also trying to run away from her, while also trying to remember where you were the last time when every single grate looks the same, and just a lot of everything kind of compiling together to get you to the end of that battle. And you're still really accomplished when you're finally through it. And even then, you're still like, is it really done? Is she really gone? Is it for real this time? Are they still playing with me? And like, I think even honestly, for the rest of the game, I thought she was going to come back just one more time. I wasn't sure. And least favorite segments, probably also maybe a skills issue. I didn't honestly like just the open worldness of 2. I got lost so many times. I had to backtrack so many times. I really didn't like the aspect. I forgot about the radio, but I really did not like the aspect of the radio. It was so hard, even with headphones on, to kind of determine which direction or where everything was coming from, and I felt frustrated more than anything else, and that took me out of the scariness of the second one a lot too. If I had to name a least favorite from the first, it was that dog. The dog thing. I don't know if it ever had a name. Fido, that nightmare dog. It was like a really great creature design, but I really hated fighting that thing. I hated fighting that thing so much. I think that was one instance where I gave up and handed the controller to someone else, and I was like, "You beat it." that was it for me.
Dark Slayer, did you go on this one yet?
I did not. But if it's my turn, I will absolutely go right now.
Sure.
And the question is, how do I feel about
The general gameplay between Evil Within 1 and 2.
Um, I mean, we're just gonna be all talking about the jank at this point. I actually do. I agree with Lady Tolkien. I do enjoy some good jank in my horror games. Funny enough, some of them that have a really bad jank in it, they do it on purpose just because it makes it harder, especially when you're dealing with stressful situations in those horror games. But the first one did feel a lot more stiff to me than it did in the second game. The second game felt a lot more, I don't know, I guess I should describe it as like fluid. It's a weird way to say that, but yeah, I don't know. It was just some aspects of the first game that I uh, enjoyed less than I did in the second game. My favorite segment is I'm gonna say the keeper fight, definitely. Especially when you get to the last of it, and it turns out there's 2, which threw me for a loop. 'Cause I was like, "Oh, literally the Squidward meme where he's like, there's 2 of them." um, I thought that fight was pretty fun and very very stressful to me. My least favorite segment, it's definitely when theater takes over in the second game, and then the world's just like fire, and then it's like broad daylight, and then you got these fire zombies. It just really stopped being scary at that point for me. Like it kind of put everything at a standstill in terms of like the atmosphere, because they're just magma dolls, like magma putty coming at you, and then they have a stupid gimmick where it's like they can't be hurt when they're on fire, and then you got to sneak them. It was just a hassle, honestly, and it didn't really kill it for me for the second game. It was just like oh, this is kind of annoying, and then it picked up again. So I was happy with that. But yeah, those my favorite and least favorite.
Okay, I'm gonna go with gameplay. As I said before, I still subscribe to the same opinion that the second one is just better than the first one on gameplay. As for the jank thing, like there can be jank, but one thing that I will say is that the model of this game and what Mikami tried to do, he literally tried to make this kind of just the weird psychological Resident Evil 4 aspects. And I do feel in some ways, if you make something where it's a generational like success gameplay wise, right? Like everyone liked the original RE4, and then you try to build on that in some sort of fashion, then you're kind of going to set yourself up for expectations and raising the bar. And that's where I think the jank argument kind of gets shot in the foot, because if you can make one solid like kind of action game, horror action, then you should be able to like make some mechanics fit for the other. And like I said, I didn't like the fact that you try to drop a match on something, it just doesn't work sometimes. But I will give Mikami credit there. It is still a very well paced and functional game for sure, even if some of the enemies kind of annoyed me, like the ones where they have this giant log on their back or whatever. They're I forgot what they're called, but you know them when you're walking around after the catacombs and you see these big ass things that could do like a lot of damage to you. It's I don't know, it's just there's a lot of stuff I really want to love about the first one gameplay wise, and I have like 140 hours into that game. But even when speed running it, yeah, the weird execution style enemies of trauma, they are one of the most annoying enemies later on in the game. I really hate them. That's why when I see them, I throw grenades at them constantly, because I do not love dealing with them. And there's some enemies that's cool to fight as well. Like I said, we all sang our praises about Laura, but I just think it runs into the same problem as RE1, where it's a solid first step game, but it's not fully realized gameplay wise until Resident Evil 2. When they got to Resident Evil 2, that's where everything felt, oh, okay, they're getting the formula now. I understand this. This is better. I like the fact that if you have a status ailment, if you're hurt or something, Leon will hold his side. You couldn't do that in the original because that mechanic or feature was not there. Therefore, I do like those technological advancements when it came to that, and I feel like 2 is an improvement in those areas. But of course, as we always talked about and as we illustrated, I don't like the flame enemies whatsoever. That could have been better realized. And maybe some of the final steps of the game, I don't like the final boss in either of the Evil Within games, to be honest. So if there was like a hypothetical third one, which we'll save for later, I feel like final boss improvement needs to be put in there, because I didn't like Myra just dropping weapons all over the place and it taking 80 years to kill her. And I thought that Ruvik was kind of hilarious, like a clown car crashing into the wall, because you're flying everywhere. Like, then you get impaled and then you get a rocket launcher. It's like, what is going on? And then you have to shoot the brain with the pistol. I'll give them points for ingenuity of making that fight as ridiculous as fuck. But yeah, it's definitely kind of up and down with what you want personally, but I do like you have to set up, you have to plan, you have to use strategy in Evil Within, because if you don't, you're kind of gonna get fucked. And I will give the first game credit to another degree. I missed the system where there was like traps everywhere and you can use that against certain people. I feel like that could have been a lot more fleshed out in the sequel, but it kind of wasn't. It's just there. You can still lure people or whatnot. You can hide in bushes. They try to do their stealth mechanics and make that a little bit more refined, so to speak. But I miss the idea of, hey, there's this lever you could pull and you can like shish kebab 2 or 3 people, or you can, there's more bombs and you can shoot a bomb near them, even though sometimes it could affect you. It's that push and pull to Evil Within that kind of makes it a little bit entertaining, so I will give it that benefit. Overall though, interesting games to play. There's just certain things with Microsoft I'm itching to talk about. Well, I'll talk about that later. Anyway, we are moving on to the next question. This is going to be probably kind of brief because it depends on the person who has touched this mode, but did you know there was a first person mode in Evil Within and a later update for Evil Within 2? And have you played this mode in particular? Did it change your perspective on the game? If you haven't, you can skip this question and we'll move on to the next person. Remember, Ben, I want you to go first.
So I'm gonna actually have to skip this one. I have not played the first person modes for them. I would like to go back and try them, but at the time that I played the games, it wasn't something that interests me. I think I was also still traumatized from Resident Evil 7.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I'll go on this since I tried this mode. It's all right. If everyone remembers correctly, I think the reason this is the sole reason why they did this is two reasons. Number one is because in the first Evil Within, you do get like a kind of a first person melee mode with the keeper punching things and whatnot. I would assume that's where the experiment kind of began for them to say, oh, maybe we could put our entire sequel in first person eventually after a certain update. So at launch it didn't have it for Evil Within 2, and then later on it did, along with a couple of other bonus features, some very minuscule, but it's very interesting. And then there was a segment in Evil Within 2 where you're in the sewers, and that whole segment with the gas is first person, all of it. And I thought that was very weird because it's like the game presents itself as a third person sort of shooter, right? And then you go into the sewers and it's all first person. You're like, what the fuck is going on? Why did the camera change? But then I realized, oh, they want to make this gas creature thing stand out and scary. I'm like, oh, okay, I see why they did this. It's kind of cool with them experimenting with certain styles. And that's where I sort of thought about that idea. Oh, maybe they should make a mode or something you could toggle it on. And they did. I've played the beginning of this in first person. What I say the experience is different, it's still virtually the same game. And I do think the shooting mechanics are fine. They are fine for what they are. You can actually really aim well. I thought it was going to be like a tacked on mode like RE Village with their third person mode, where it's like it's just tacked on. They really didn't think about it way too much. It's just there and you can use it, but it flows a bit better than that. I'm very curious to see how this mode works under pressure with multiple things in the environment, the more of those friggin' white monsters, the globs everywhere, and fighting bosses, because I haven't fought a boss in this mode, but I would imagine it's going to be 10 times more terrifying to see them up close and personal. I'm really looking forward to doing a live stream of this in first person and seeing how it goes, because overall I have positive things to say. I liked it. Next up is Nino. Have you played this in first person or no?
I have not. I know I kind of briefly touched on it, but I have like, especially when I was younger, and it's maybe getting better now, oddly, just because I have more tools to my at my disposal for playing first person games. But I get a lot of really bad motion sickness, especially triggered by first person perspective games. And even when I was younger, like Spyro, I found that out the hard way. I tried to play Spyro when I was younger, when it first came out, and within 10 to 15 minutes, I got violently ill. So at the time when it came out and it was announced, I'm like, well, that means I can't play it. I just wrote it off entirely. But in recent times, I've been playing a few first person games now. And if I adjust some of the settings in the game settings and stuff like that, I find that it won't trigger my motion sickness anymore, or not nearly as much. Or at least I have a better gauge of when I should stop. If I can have that feeling of, oh no, this is going to hit me the wrong way, I'm going to stop this one. So I'm curious to go and check it out and see what the settings look like in the game settings, see if I can change the field of view or do some other things in there to give it a shot. But if not, I'm probably just going to have to skip it.
Next up is Lucian. Did you play first person mode of Evil Within 2?
So I think actually I got into it a bit, but I don't know, it's just very interesting. It's kind of how I feel with like when they added the third person mode in Village. Since I was so accustomed to like first person in that game, I didn't really want to like go into the third person mode. And I feel like it's that way with Evil Within, but I feel like it might be a interesting experience. I don't know if you're aware as well. If you do get the Microsoft version of Evil Within 1, they do have a first person mode as well. and then the cheats that they later added to 2. I'm pretty sure they do have it, but I mean, maybe I'll do a playthrough later, but that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I think that is 100% accurate, because someone told me that Evil Within is unlisted if you did not buy the game already on consoles. I don't know about PC. I think it's still there on PC, but in terms of what is it, PlayStation, someone told me they could not find the game in the store like anywhere. So I do believe Microsoft probably did update their version, because it's a no-brainer since they bought out Bethesda, and therefore they would probably be the first in line to get those updates to the game. And I'm really surprised by that, because I did not know that they retroactively put first person into the first game as well. But now that I think about it, I kind of believe it, because they did update the letterboxing and everything. Next.
Yeah, Evil Within 1 is still on PlayStation. I don't know what that person was.
I don't.
About.
That's weird. I don't
That's
know.
weird.
He told me that it was sort of unlisted, but
Maybe it was a glitch or something.
yeah, probably
yeah.
so. But next up is Darkslayer. Did you play Evil Within in first person?
Yes, I played it very briefly, honestly. I wasn't really a big fan of the first person view. Like I think it was cool. I might have to do another playthrough of it because it was so long ago that I tried it when it first came out. But I remember playing it and I was like, I feel like certain sections do very well with the first person view, like the the gas chamber section with the weird shrieker creature. Um, but other than that, there were just certain parts where I was just literally just exploring. And I'm like, and like it was okay. Like I said, I'll probably do another playthrough, but it was okay for me. It was fine for the most part.
Yeah, we're talking about it in the chat now. I believe that this was probably going to be the test bed for them to do the whole VR thing, and considering that, well, it's like a augmented and virtual reality with STEM anyway, you kind of put two and two together. That's probably what they were going for with future updates to this.
Mm-hmm.
And Tolkien, I know you did not play first person mode.
Oh yeah.
Did you?
Well, no.
See, I told you.
But-
I was right.
No, but I was gonna say, even though I haven't played it, I think it would be kind of interesting, just because I think first person would actually help, especially my issue with it being more open, because first person would be, obviously to me, be more scary than third person. So I'd be curious to see if that makes me change my mind a little bit of the second game.
I'm wondering I know this is unrelated, but it's a good tangent. I'm thinking to myself, maybe moving forward and seeing how Resident Evil Requiem is doing the whole, oh, you can play in first person whenever you want, or you can play in third person whenever you want. I'm thinking maybe other survival horror games who want to try both could probably attempt to do both. But then there's the other side of my brain that goes, that has to be a lot of work to do one camera angle, do another, and make a whole game work around it, and try to get that out during launch. It'd be cool though if they gave us more options and ideals to do this at launch, and then we could pick whatever we want. And I hope that does become a standard. If they do execute that, that'd be pretty unique and awesome. But before we move on, does anyone else want to add to this before we move to the next question? Going once, going twice. Okay, sold to the Laura in red. All right, these are the final two questions. This one kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I know people might have a bit to say, but I put this in a document for a reason. As everyone knows, Tango Gameworks was closed for a little bit, and then they were given to Krafton. Krafton, they're the guys that made Callisto Protocol, I believe, with Striking Distance. And they were sold off to them later, kind of out of courtesy, and they managed to keep Hi-Fi Rush as a franchise, but The Evil Within went back to Microsoft. That's where they own the IP. They were apparently working on anniversary content for Evil Within. What is your thoughts on Xbox parting ways with Tango Gameworks, and what did you think of this proposed anniversary content and what it could have been? I will go with Ren Ben first.
So I did not understand why when they initially announced that they had closed Tango Gameworks, it made not a lot of sense to me because they did so on the heels of a highly successful game, and it just didn't make sense to me. Yeah, same. I'm trying to think of how to say it without using words that I shouldn't use on a podcast. But I think I do remember a lot of people, and myself being one of them, feeling some kind of way about it, and kind of seeing it in a sense of, okay, well, that may actually be the end of any hope that we had for um more Evil Within content. I think it's disappointing that we didn't get to see what that anniversary content could have been. I don't know what it could have been, but I wanted to see what it was. And yeah, same. I kind of wish Microsoft hadn't kept the IP, because what are they going to do with it? Nothing right now. So yeah. Yeah, it's very frustrating, and I think the nicest way to put it is frustrating and incredibly disappointing.
Tolkien?
Yeah.
Tolkien, it is your turn. What do you think of Tango being shuttered for a little bit and Microsoft keeping the Evil Within rights?
Oh, I feel like I'm gonna get some shade. I mean, I don't know. I guess I can't say I wasn't upset, but I guess I am probably one of the few that did not have this giant pipe dream of getting an Evil Within 3. I don't know if I can call it realism or just looking at facts, but like, you were sitting at 7 years after the second one, and there's not even a confirmation or anything. I mean, at that point, I kind of just thought, we're not getting one. I mean, I kind of just gave up on that. Anniversary content, for me, looking at the way the gaming industry goes anymore, anniversary content could have just been a remaster of the older games, or a collector bundle, anything like that anymore. We see the train of remasters and remakes being the thing now. For all we know, it was that, and that was it. I don't know. I mean, I love Evil Within as much as the biggest fans out there. But the way, for me, the second one ended, of course, there are questions that didn't ever really get answers. People that we don't know the fates of them, but I think the way it ended kind of didn't justify a third. At least not with Sebastian as being our protagonist. So I don't know how they would have done it. And looking at the studio, I think they've even said that at the time, they were working on the Hi-Fi Rush. They had considered a sequel to that. They had made Ghostwire Tokyo. They wanted to do a second of that. And kind of Evil Within got thrown into like the back on the shelf to collect the dust. And I don't know. I've read several articles of people saying that, looking at just the sales numbers, I don't think they would have it would not really have been smart to make an Evil Within 3. The first one did, I think, 4 million copies. I think the first one sold. I don't know after how long, but they were saying the second one did not. It made 4 times less than what the first one did. So I mean, I don't really know if it would have been financially good for them to try to make a third. I guess it kind of depended on now in today's era of gaming. I think horror is more popular now than it was 10 years ago. So, I mean, it could have very well done well. I mean, we don't know. But I don't know. I just always kind of thought to myself, hoping for a third one was like a pipe dream. And I wouldn't really know what they would even continue on, considering the end of the second. But I mean, of course, as a fan, if they were ever going to make another one, I ain't gonna say no. I ain't that dumb. I'll say yes. I'll take it. But I don't know.
All right, it's my turn. I have a couple of words to say on this. Number one is that every bit of this decision to me sucks ass. I don't know any other way to explain it outside of that, because I understand why they shutter studios due to the fact of something selling low or whatever, but Xbox was like jumping up and down in panties and thongs when they saw what Hi-Fi Rush was doing with them, and then all of a sudden studio's gone in the blink of an eye. Personally speaking, I know what I said. I'm sticking to it. But personally speaking, there's two things I really hate about this the most. Number one is that Phil Spencer did say himself, and I know that Xbox and Microsoft, they're technically his boss, but he did say, we're going to try to mitigate studio closures, to not have many of them since we shuttered Lionhead and we realized that was a terrible decision and a terrible move. And the second thing is, when they bought Bethesda, and they show, you know how Xbox does that little banner when they buy out a company? They did the same thing for fucking COD when they showed off, oh, we own this studio, that IP, this IP, and then this is our prestigious franchises going forward. Evil Within was on there and Doom was on there, so I just think to myself, what is the point of showing something like that and being proud of it if you're not gonna do anything with it? That's the first thing that comes into my brain. I'm just like, what is really the point of we're gonna champion buying the studio, but we're gonna put the IP into the coal mines. It's just counterproductive in my personal opinion. I do agree that horror is very popular now, and that kind of lends credence to, if they did this anniversary update, I do think new fans would have jumped on board with it and played it. And this is sort of happening with another IP, which is Ninja Gaiden. It's been literally like 10, 11 something years before we saw Ninja Gaiden 3, and that is getting sort of a new sequel back from the dead, and most people did play Ninja Gaiden Black. Onimusha came back to, even Resident Evil managed to come back from a very, very terrible time period, which was between 2012 and 2016, when RE was like awful. Silent Hill also like skipped a generation for the PS4. So there is a lots of horror now that is super popular, and I feel like not capitalizing on that is a piss poor idea, since so many people want to play remakes, remasters, they want to get into horror franchises. There's many horror streamers now. Now is the perfect time as ever to do horror IPs, because there's so much of this love for them, and the fact that they sell so much now is astronomical. I just chalk it up to maybe it was the wrong time and the wrong place, but there's potential probably to be had there, and it's been a big mishandling of these studios, which is kind of why I'm like, I'm very skeptical of acquisitions these days. If I see one, I usually go, Not really. I don't know about that because there's always the possibility of the IP never getting commissioned or never getting put to place or never really having anything to do with it. And that sucks. That's what I think of this whole situation. As for the anniversary update, I'm going to keep this brief. It could have been anything. The wording of that is so weird because I know some people jumped on that and said Evil Within 3, Evil Within 3, Evil Within 3. No, anniversary just sounds like they had some content planned, and they say this for RE too. Like people have to understand, they say this shit for Resident Evil every time anniversary comes. They're very nondescript until we actually see something, but it could mean anything. When they talked about RE for the 25th anniversary, guess which is one of the things that we got for that anniversary? That was Resident Evil Reverse, and that's shutting down very, very soon. So it's just one of those things. It could mean anything. It's just an update for the anniversary. And if it was 3, I would have taken it. If it was more content for 1 and 2, it would have been like fine. But in the back of my mind, I would have been like, I kind of want a new game, but hey, new fans can get into this update. Or even if it's a remake of 1, I would have taken that as well, because I thoroughly do believe that you could probably go back and fix up some aspects from there or do more side stories. It's just, the possibilities are endless, really. But that's what I think of that whole ordeal. Is just a big amount of suckage, and that's what I think of it. So Nino, it is your turn. What do you think of the whole closure of Tango Gameworks and Microsoft owning Evil Within?
Basically, you took nearly all the words out of my mouth of what I was thinking and my thoughts on Microsoft. Phil, what did you say in Ren? He said Microsoft likes to show off their toys, put them on the shelf, and hope you forget they exist. Basically, I feel like Microsoft is a studio right now where things get bought up and then they go there to die. So it really irritated me when I found out Tango got closed, just because I couldn't understand it. Like, they had back to back like banger games that were coming out. They felt like they were doing hit after hit after hit, and they're like, oh no, we're close. I'm like, okay, well, it just reminds me of, like, you know, when companies do their favorite thing of mergers and acquisitions, and they buy up stuff just so nobody can use it. They don't even care if it's good. They just want nobody else to use it, and it not to be able to exist anymore. I just felt like that's what they did with it. I also, I don't know, part of me in a like secretly hopeful way was wishing we would get more content, wishing that they would continue with it, but knowing where it is and who owns it and where it sits, and also that the second game didn't do as well. Oh my god, my cat's screaming in the background, sorry. But knowing that it didn't do I'm so sorry, he's so loud. Knowing it didn't do as well as the first game, it just, like, I just don't think it's going to happen. Though I will say, when I was watching all the showcases, and there were a few times where part of me was like, okay, this must be the Evil Within 3. Maybe they're going to surprise me. Maybe that's what it's going to be. Because we've seen so many franchises where we thought they were dead come back. And like Silent Hill and Resident Evil made a comeback, and all these other ones. So part of me, when we got what we did with Requiem, I was still excited, but I very much thought that teaser trailer during the showcases was going to be a new Evil Within at the very start of it. And then the same thing happened with that, what the heck was, like, that, whatever that Call of Duty Black Ops game, it almost got me, and then it was a bait and switch that it was COD, and I was so mad. And like I was so mad. That made me so mad. Sorry, I just randomly thought of that. But anniversary stuff, and like y'all said, that could really be anything. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I actually, like, you know that meme of the guy where his eyes are closed and he looks annoyed and he just takes his headphones off? That's basically how I felt with that switch up, and I thought, and it was just whatever that was. Anyway, anniversary content, it really could be anything. It could be a photo on their socials. It could be a new game. Look at what Konami did with that skateboard that we got for the Silent Hill anniversary one year, and everyone's like, what? So I really don't hold a lot of hope when people say, oh, we're getting anniversary editions, we're getting anniversary news for a game. I just kind of wait and see what's going to happen. And it seems like the super big, important, exciting things, they don't announce like that. But I won't say never. We've seen a lot of dead franchises come back, and like you've mentioned, horror is on the rise. It's like the year of horror again. So many great horror movies coming out, so many remakes coming out, doing well. Everyone's kind of jumping on the bandwagon, so I kind of just, I don't know, maybe. I won't say it won't ever happen.
I have a slight side tangents, and then I'm gonna get to everyone else, and maybe if they want to include this in their answers, or if they want to chime in on this, they can. I just want to say for the record that Black Ops 7 presentation, that was the biggest piece of crap I think I've ever seen. I was so mad by that, because the way it opens, it looks exactly like, wait a minute, is that Sebastian? Wait, why is there butterflies down? Why is there other worlds? What's going on? Why is everything decrepit? I swear it looked like some sort of Evil Within presentation. I was so fucking pissed. I was thinking to myself, hey, this looks like, man, I got baited hard. I was just like, oof, boo! I just instantly started booing. Just because it really looked just like that, and I don't know if that was just them fucking with us, or I think it was, personally speaking. I was so goddamn disappointed. It hurt. That's all I have to say about that. But Interlucian, what do you have to say about how Tango Games Works closed? And do you have any opinions on that Microsoft Black Ops trailer? Well, what did you feel about it? Fake out? Did it feel like Evil Within, etc.?
I mean, I have a lot to say. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it's been covered. But let's go back to when I finished Evil Within 2. I mean, this is a question after. There was some unanswered things, so I was hoping for a third, okay? And then we go to when Microsoft buys Bethesda. I see Evil Within on there. I'm like, okay. I'm hoping something can happen. And then we go into, they updated Evil Within 1 with first person mode and adding cheats and everything. That just irritated me because, yeah, like, I guess the anniversary content was maybe a definitive edition of the first game, including all DLCs and graphical enhancements. But it turns out it was canceled when Microsoft closed Tango Gameworks. And I guess one of the reasons, maybe I heard that the reason they did that was because they were working on Hi-Fi Rush 2, which makes no complete sense to me. Because Hi-Fi Rush, the year before at the Game Awards, won Game of the Year, right? Or it wasn't Game of the Year, but they got tons of awards.
They got high praise for that game. I do remember.
Yeah,
that.
high praise.
The reviews.
Yeah, it
were
wasn't Game of the
great.
Year.
Yeah.
But so it also turns out that Mikami left Tango in 2023, which, I mean, I don't think he was like too involved on 2. I think he was somewhat involved in 2, but yeah, we're just seeing like all these symbols about like how, oh yeah, we're probably not gonna get a sequel. But yeah, it was mentioned earlier. Somebody did mention, yeah, over 4 million was sold for Evil Within 1. Evil Within 2 sold about 1 million copies. So there's that. I haven't really been watching Xbox like showcases. I didn't get to see the Black Ops 7. I don't think I watched that one. The only reason I tuned into Xbox showcases and I tuned in was because I had little hope that maybe there's going to be an Evil Within 3. But I did watch when y'all watched that showcase, and I'm like, wow, they debated everybody. But yeah, it is really irritating because Hi-Fi Rush did so good, and we're maybe getting something for Evil Within anniversary, and it was canceled when they were closed. So yeah, that was a really bad day. But yeah, that's all I got.
Darkslayer, how about you? How did you feel about them closing Tango, and how did you feel about that Black Ops 7 introduction trailer that they showed, where it looks like Evil Within, but not really?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm more upset at a game showcase, especially with the whole bait and switch with Black Ops. I didn't even watch it. I got too annoyed. As soon as I saw it, I instantly shut it off. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go back watching brain rot on YouTube. But I gotta go on this small thing where it's like I'm getting really tired of like seeing these companies like Xbox and shit bringing in these big names to make these like what seemed like they were going to be really good horror games, like, and then end up canceling it, and then all the other people or somebody ends up leaving or something like that. It makes it hard to get excited for certain titles anymore. Uh, as far as the anniversary content, well, I think it probably would. I pretty much agree that probably would have just been like some quality of life changes, like maybe graphical wise, maybe like some extra bonuses here and there. Nothing too crazy. I definitely don't think it was gonna be another game, especially in that position. I don't think it was gonna be another game. I'd be more surprised if it was. It would have been crazy if it was, but I wasn't really holding my breath on that. To be perfectly honest, and that's very much all I got on that. This is pretty brief.
Well, it's fine. We are heading into the final question. Question number 13. If there hypothetically was an Evil Within 3, which direction would you like for them to go into? I will go with Rim Ben first.
So kind of echoing some of the things that Tolkien said in the previous question, I am not entirely sure where they would go with it. I kind of feel like they could have taken it in a direction because we seem to have more or less resolved Sebastian's story to a point. I would have really liked to have seen more with Kidman. Because um I felt like we could have done more with her story. We could have learned more about her because we started with two, and I wanted to know more about her story. So I think they could have gone in that direction, but I don't necessarily know what direction I would have liked them to go in. I kind of would have just been excited to see whatever they would have come up with. But you know, it would be interesting because we kind of more or less seem to have we got closure in a sense. I don't know. I guess saying they resolved things probably is not the best way to phrase it. I would say like we got some closure in a sense, and there were still questions, but I don't know if there were enough questions to justify taking the exact same story further. Like it would have had to gone in a different direction, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm going to say some similar things. I'll keep it brief. I believe personally, you can't. I don't think they could do something else with Sebastian unless they go super radical and be like, all right, we're gonna kill his daughter or some crazy shit. But you could expect horror to do that. there's a few things that are weird with the leftover plot threads. Why is there a stem that activates? Something has gone wrong there. Ruvik is still out there and he's in Leslie's body because if you remember correctly, Leslie is the one who had his brain transferred and Ruvik he basically took over his body. And he's walking around as him. And so he exists somewhere in STEM. Then there's the fact that Kidman told Sebastian that Joseph's still alive and she might go in there to rescue him, or maybe Sebastian might go in there because of that revelation. We have no idea how wild a story like that would get, but they could come up with something, and I believe that's some of the seeds they were planting at the conclusion of 2 when they revealed some of the stuff. It didn't seem like a full finality outside of Sebastian finally getting his daughter, and that's it. They could end it there with him and maybe have him be a mentor character, but I believe the main character should have been Kidman if they made a third game, because there's so much more to explore and there's so little of her, I feel, that we really don't know. There's a bit they can go into that, and it'd be, hey, I mean, people like Kidman, cool female horror protagonist for the next iteration, and have her be the main character and have her have her own motivations and go up against Mobius again. It makes sense. And I personally would say that's the story they should go with overall, versus just having like Sebastian come back one more time or something like that for the main character slot. Just have him be a family man, and if he comes back or not, great. If not, I could live with the fact that Kidman could be the next protagonist. That's fine. Next up is Nino. What would you want for a hypothetical Evil Within 3?
Pretty similar to what you said. Like I feel like there's still so many open-ended questions, or like questions that don't have answers to them yet. Like you said, Leslie slash Ruvik is still out there somewhere. You get that glimpse of him at the end of the first one, and we don't really know what that's going on, what implications that can have. Also, knowing that Joseph is alive and he's somewhere, we never really know what happens to him, and that just feels like I want to know what happened to him, and it just seems too open-ended for them to just leave it like that without any intention of, at some point, wanting to tell us the rest of that story. And same thing with Kidman. I want to know more of her backstory. She was really interesting from what I saw in the DLC. There's so much of what she had gone through with the organization she was a part of, Mobius, and all of that. And clearly, I feel like even if that whole area was like taken care of, ... at the end of 2, like he said, that STEM computer booted up again, which means it's not over. Like the double tap didn't happen. So I feel like they could open it up again. Maybe if not for a full story, maybe if in a perfect future imaginary dream world, the anniversary gift we got was DLC to the Evil Within 2, that kind of went back into that kind of fleshed out the what happened in between when Sebastian was knocked out and they just left him there in the tub. And maybe just kind of like how they did with Village, you get more of the story fleshed out, and with 7 you get more of the story fleshed out of like what happened to the one member of the family that we thought got away for a little while. So maybe something like that in a perfect world.
Andrew Lucian, it is your turn. If there was hypothetical Evil Within 3 or more content, what would you want personally?
I mean, basically about the same thing. You had the abandoned STEM system turning on, the possibility of Ruvik just taking over Leslie, and then the fact that Joseph isn't dead, which, yeah, it's crazy because how that situation happened, and we thought because he was just gone. I don't know, and I don't like it. That's why I had so much of a chance, like so much hope that we are gonna get a sequel. Like, I don't know, cover like Joseph and like his portion, like how he survived or something, and then Kidman like rescuing him. I feel like Sebastian and his story is about like done for now because the end of 2. I mean, but yeah, I guess that's all I gotta say. It sucks, but yeah, hopefully in the future this changes.
And Darkslayer, you are the last one on this question. If there was a hypothetical Evil Within 3, what would you personally want for it?
It's actually funny. Me and another friend were going back and forth on like a head canon or what we think it would be. Specifically, probably tied around Kidman and also Sebastian's daughter. Like I don't know, like some random shit happens with Ruvik, or when they run into Ruvik again, uh, and Sebastian gets killed off by like whatever the fuck, and then it's what's the daughter's name? Lily. Lily is like old. It's like further in the future, and Lily's like older now, and she's a young woman. And she takes up the mantle of being a detective like Sebastian, and teaming up with Kidman, and taking on Ruvik for the second time, who's also in Leslie's body. Don't know how they would work the whole like maybe something where STEM leaks out into the real world or something. I don't know. It was just something that we would mull over and like have hypotheticals on. But yeah, that's pretty much how I would like for that to go, or I wouldn't mind seeing that if we end up ever getting a third game. But yeah.
I'll just say this for the record, that would have been the perfect anniversary content if they did a DLC season pass for 2, because 2 never got any of that compared to the first one, and I always thought that was weird. Last but not least, though, as I forgot about someone, which is Token. It is your turn.
Yeah, I don't know how you could forget about me. That is unreal.
I almost went to sleep on my arm, so
Whatever. You be quiet. I'm ignoring you. But again, I feel like I'm going to be an outlier on this one, considering my previous answer. But I really don't know how they would make a third. I feel like the couple of questions that are left that didn't really get a full answer, you cannot make a full game out of. Sure, you could go DLC, I guess. Would think that'd be, I don't know, to me it's a little weird to put out DLC of a game that's like 7-8 years old now, but I mean, DLC would be better for closing those gaps than trying to squeeze in a third game that they don't know if it would even do well. They don't know the kind of reception it would have, because in all honesty, like I said earlier, Sebastian's story is over. Can't really drag the poor old man back out for a third. Like, don't abuse him like that. I don't know. I just kind of like, yeah, there are the questions everybody's been saying, it's hinted at that Ruvik is now in control of Leslie's body at the end of 1. You have the unknown Joseph, don't know where he is, like what the fuck happened to him. And I don't know. I feel like I don't necessarily know if they did it on purpose because it was made so long ago. But like, there's this sometimes annoying trend of games and movies leaving things open-ended on purpose to leave the possibility of, if they ever wanted to go back to their game or to their movie, that they could make another one. You know how they do those things. But sometimes I feel like they leave things open-ended on purpose. They want to leave something there for you to continue to talk about, for you to continue to think about and wonder about for all time, and it's never going to get answered. And I feel like this, what's Ruvik going to do in Leslie's body, or we're always gonna, some of us, except for Ren, I guess, are gonna wonder what happened to Joseph. But I don't know. I feel like sometimes not knowing is better than knowing. I kind of like not knowing. It's left up to us to decide or think about what happened to these characters and not necessarily have an answer that could end up being disappointed if they did want to answer it in a game or a DLC. I don't know. Like I said, I would totally take an Evil Within 3 if they were going to do it. Considering the financial situation of what 2 did, I highly, highly doubt we will ever get a third. But I wouldn't say no.
Focus a sourpuss. All right.
Oh boy. I love the Evil Within. I love it. But I'm just saying, from a financial standpoint, if your sequel makes 4 times less than your first one, that ain't good. But yes, no. But I do think it could probably do better now than it did then, considering, as we discussed, the horror boom is real. I think it would actually probably do well.
You have cooties. All right.
Oh.
I'm gonna sign off now. That was funny. Okay. All right, we're gonna do our introductions. Time for bed. It's probably time for bed for me, sleepy boy. But I am going to do outros. So Ren Ben, where can we find you?
So you can find me on Twitch as RenRenBen. You can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, and also TikTok. But on TikTok, I am RenRenBenBen because I screwed up my own name.
Dark Slayer, where can we find you on social media, buddy?
You can absolutely find me on YouTube and Twitch as Scenario B Horror. As far as Instagram, is definitely gonna be the same name as on here, Dark Slayer _22. Yeah.
You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. You can find me on Twitch at the slightly rebranded Renegade Operative _ because, well, some trolls stole my original name. I don't know why, but when I find them, I'm fighting them in the back alley in Street Fighter 2, and I'm gonna be the winner. I will probably stream tomorrow. I might do something weird and random, so just look forward to that, and it should be pretty funny, along with this podcast on the Infinite Ammo Syndicate account. So give us a follow, check it out. Next up is Nino. Where can we find you on social media?
All right, you can find me on Twitch and Blue Sky under the handle Nino Kunri. And you can find me on Instagram, where I post entirely too many clips, as Nino Kunri TV. And Twitter, I'm on there as Nino Kunri TV as well.
Tolkien, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me at Lady Tolkien on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Yeah, simple enough.
Enderlucian, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Enderlucian. But it was a pleasure being here. Red knows I've been waiting for this podcast for a minute, so I couldn't miss out.
Oh, no problem, man. And for what's next, well, it's August and September is going to be an onslaught because there's going to be Requiem news and new trailers. And if they show a certain somebody, which they have been speculating for the longest time, there's probably going to be a podcast on him when they show him, and I'm pretty sure you know who that is, Mr. Old Man Leon. So I will be looking forward to more story trailers and developments on Requiem, and the more that we see, we will definitely talk about it as we go along, and more horror podcasts as well, because that's always pretty good to talk about. But this is the Infinite Ammo Syndicate signing out. Bring back Evil Within, and we will see you guys next time. Later.